Hey, good day, everybody, and welcome back to Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I so appreciate him doing this class, and we're moving on to a new Mishnah today. I know we're a half hour later than usual, and this is because Rabbi has to clear the Sabbath in Israel, and the sun's starting to set a little bit later, so we have to oblige the Rabbi. We're so grateful that he takes the time out of his busy schedule to share these with us. So today we're on chapter 2, Mishna 10. So let's just tune right in and see how the rabbi's doing. And shalom, Rabbi, you're live on the air. We're going to turn it over to you. I'm sorry I was having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. So I'm 5 extra minutes late behind here. So, Rabbi, it's your class.
Always a pleasure. I think you'll be very happy finally starting a new Mishnah. I want to gain a little bit of ground, so to speak. So, actually, we might actually finish this Mishnah because there's quite a bit, there's relatively short Mishnah, but, there is what to be said over here. The Mishnah says, we spoke about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, right? He was the youngest of the students of Hillel, right? You can imagine who the other students were. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 primary disciples. They were Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenis, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel, and Rabbi Elazar ben Arai. Now we're going to see in the next Mishnah, what character trait exemplifies these five students, right? We're going to see what is so important about them, or what character trait, so to speak, is so important, and so important for them. So here we mention, or the Mishnah mentions 5 students. Now we have to understand, he was the, greatest rabbi of his generation. Right? Tried to, save, certain things at the time of the Second Temple. Right? He escaped kind of miraculously from the Romans. He asked for certain things, and, whatever it was. So here the Mishnah says these are the 5 primary disciples. Now, what would I think if he was so great and he was the Torah giant, of that generation? He was the leader of the entire nation. Why do you only have 5? He obviously had a lot more, right? But here, what does the Mishnah say? He had 5 primary disciples. These were his main disciples. Doesn't mean he didn't have other disciples. The Zohar, we're not going to get Kabbalistic here, but we will mention that the Zohar says that Rabbi Yochanan could explain 30 different ways the following verse. Genesis chapter 36, verse 39. What does the Torah tell me? It says, Balchanan, the son of Achbor, died, and Hadar reigned after him. The name of the city was Paul, and his wife's name was Metabel, daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahav. Okay, that sounds, genealogy. Right? That would be genealogy 101 or genealogy 101a. But it says, the Zohar says on that, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai could explain it 300 different ways. They got to understand who Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was. You got to understand how great he was. And imagine what his students were. Who were able to absorb the Torah through it. Now, he revealed the secret to 2 of his students. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkin. Right? Because the whole question in the next Mishnah, who really is considered greater? Right? Or the Mishnah after. Right? We're going to see. But 2 students he gave a secret to. And they were the greatest students. They were of his greatest students. And he taught them the Maisa Merkava. What's the Maisa Merkava? The vision that Ezekiel had in chapter 1. Which, you read that vision, you read about the vision, and you're going to say, wow, sounds unbelievable. What in the world is it talking about? It's Kabbalah. I remember, I learned a certain piece of Talmud on it. It's very, very hard. Very, very hard to understand. Right? So here, these are 2 special students. So the question is, if he's the exilarch, right? I like that word, exilarch. He's the exilarch of the Jewish people. You only had 5 students. Now, you could say I already answered the question, because the students here are primary disciples. So these are his main students. That would be the easy explanation. Doesn't mean he only had 5 students. Could have had hundreds, thousands. But these are his 5 main disciples, the ones he trusted the most. Now, what do we learn from here? Just because somebody learns by someone else, they learn under a certain rabbi, does that necessarily make them a student? Right? I mentioned last week in my class on Noahide Nations, what makes someone a rabbi? Right? Not going to go through it. Right? There are different levels of rabbinic ordination today.
A very interesting class.
And then actually, Ray Peterson put it up on Noahide Nations. Now, I don't know why, for some reason you couldn't tap into it, but when I clicked it on, it came through. But any case, anyone, if you go on to Noahide Nations, it should be there. For any reason someone can't, they click it on and nothing happens, so contact me and I'll send it to you. So we spoke over there what it means to take someone as a rabbi. Right? What makes someone a rabbi today? Not so impressive. In a certain way. Because maybe someone gets rabbinic ordination, the laws of Shabbos. Or the laws of kashrus. Or something like that. But just because they have rabbinic ordination on one thing doesn't mean they can answer another thing.
Right.
Yeah, they have a specialty, right? So my sort of personal pet peeve on that is there are people that have specialties. There are people that, focus on one thing and they, and they just learn it. Okay, you need experts. You definitely need experts. At the same time, you need people who have full breadth of Torah knowledge also. In other words, you get learning centers, or what they call kolim, for people that are married, married men, that focus only on Jewish law. That's all they focus on. In other words, they'll go through the laws of Shabbos, laws of family purity laws, the laws, let's say, of mourning, kashrus, but that's what they learn, day in and day out. Now, it could take a year and a half, maybe, to go through some of these. Could take half a year. Some of them are much shorter, whatever it is. But I remember when I was thinking of going for rabbinic ordination when I was much younger, and I saw how much people actually learned and what they went through. I'm not saying, going to the laws of Shabbos and, these other things, you're not going through material. You are. You're not going through a whole tractate. Going through a whole tractate, totally different ballgame. Because then you're seeing the breadth of Torah. Right? You're not just seeing, those pieces of Gemara that only deal with Jewish law. That are what we call Nogei and Lamaisa. They are, we want to see what's the practical law today. How does it apply today? Now, there are a number of things that might not apply. You still have to learn it. You still have to know it. But when it comes to taking this exam, let's say you go to the chief rabbinate or whoever is giving this exam, whichever rabbinic authority is giving this exam, it's going to be on the practical law. They're not going to give you an exam of the entire tractate. Why not? Because a good part of the tractate, Jewish law doesn't apply in different ways. But guess what? You still have to know it. Right? You still have to know what the Talmud said. You still have to learn it. It's still part of learning. Right? So people, I think, give a lot more credit to rabbinic ordination than really what it is. But at the same time, a person has to know, and we're going to get this, when I'm about 107, that it says the Mishna and Pirkei Avos, the person has to know his place. So what that means is, if you're not qualified to answer on this topic, don't answer. And there's sometimes people think there's overlap. And even if you got rabbinic ordination and, in one subject, don't be so quick to answer. It doesn't mean, the knowledge is right at your fingertips. By some people it is. You can ask them anywhere in the laws of Shabbos to tell you this, that, who says what, where, okay. But a person has to know what they know, clear what they don't know, what they might have to look up. Rabbi tried to teach me, that you don't answer a question straight away. Think. If it's more in depth, you got to think. Right? If it's something you know off the top of your head, you know what the answer is. It's clear cut. Fine. But think before you answer. I'd say better. I'd tell people think before they question. Think before they question.
Sure.
Right? A lot of times people have an agenda that tells them, oh, this is a question. This is an obvious question. When the reality is, it's not so obvious, is it? I'm sort of embroiled in something now. Something, I might speak about one of my Q&As this week about Kol Isha. What is Kol Isha? It means a man cannot listen to a woman's voice. Even if his wife gets her period, he can't listen to her sing. Singing, what does the Talmud say? It's comparable to licentiousness. So even if it's on a tape, you don't know, let's say, you don't know what the person looks like. You don't know what the woman looks like. Doesn't matter. Someone pointed out, according to mythology, Siren, right? She sang and caused people to who knows what. There is such a thing. We're not saying, that doesn't exist, right? But what's really behind it? What's behind it is, you're right, a man has to control his urges. Now, this does not mean, let's make clear, and I'm going to flush this out. I'm not going to go into so much. I just want to mention one point. Let's make clear. We don't say women can't sing. Nobody's putting women down and saying they can't sing ever. We're not saying that. They're allowed to sing. What's the problem? Men can't listen to them. They shouldn't sing in front of men, Jewish men. Non-Jewish doesn't matter. If you're a non-Jew, it doesn't apply. Right? So someone took me to task, what? Men can't control them, so women are suppressed? Women are suppressed! Is that what it means? I didn't say women can't sing. The rabbis didn't say they can't sing. They can sing as much as they want. Men can't listen to them. Now, if a man goes to the beach, God forbid a mixed beach, men and women there, you're going to say, well, if he gets excited, that's his problem. You're right, it's his problem. He shouldn't be there, right, if he's Jewish. Definitely shouldn't be there. You see, but he's got to control his urges. True? Nobody's denying that. So does that give him the right? Does that give him the right to abuse women? No. Doesn't give him the right. But, according to biology, let's dissect it. According to biology, whose sex drive is greater, a man or a woman? A man. Let's call a spade a spade. We're going to keep this clean. A man. And he's got to work on controlling his thoughts. Now, does that mean a woman, doesn't have a sex drive? Doesn't mean that. Totally doesn't mean that. Is she going to have the same level as a guy? No. Why? Because men are different than women. And what they expect is different. Totally different. This is biology. I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know. Right? Read the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Men and women are different. Right? There's no question. I don't think there's a question either that, a man's got a greater desire. I don't think there's any question about it, biologically speaking. Biology, forget philosophy. Now, does that give a right for a man to abuse women? No. Totally not. And if he does, it's his fault. I don't care if he can't control himself. It's his fault. Right? Now, if we're going to say a woman's voice is licentious, then a Jewish man, can't listen. He's not allowed to listen because he might have thoughts or whatever. Now, if that's true, does that mean a woman can't sing? No. Right? I never said a woman can't sing. Some people don't want to hear it. Okay. Oh, I didn't say a woman can't sing. Well, what the problem is, a man listens to a woman sing. Now, that opened up a whole can of worms. Why it opened up a whole can of worms? Because you see women sing in front of men. According to the Torah, women sing in front of men. Right? Go to the book of Exodus, or that's what they're going to say. You go to the book of Exodus. What happened by coming out of the Song of the Sea? Doesn't it say Miriam also sang? And she took her cymbals and she sang, played music and they sang, right? Does that mean she sang in front of men? Right? Someone's making a very big jump here. They brought me a proof from the book of Ezra, from Chronicles, about women playing musical instruments in the temple, right? Playing song. Does that mean they sang? Men sang. Women weren't allowed to be where men were. Women in a separate area. But even if you want to tell me they're in the same place, even if you're going to tell me that, you can't go according to translation. I mean, the translation says they sang. It seems like it was of song. But if you look what was said before, what was song? What did song mean? They played instruments. If they played instruments, does that tell me 100% that women sang? You're going to say, well, isn't that obvious? No, it's not. Because it would have been so obvious. The commentaries I looked up didn't say anything. They didn't say, how could women be there? How could women sing? If you look at Judges, you hear me? So if you go according to Judges, the book of Judges, it says Deborah was a judge, right? Deborah was a judge. All the commentaries go to town over there. All the commentaries ask, how could she judge in front of men? How could she have men come to her? What about the laws of modesty? Everybody asks the question because it's an obvious question. This seems to be immodest. You're going to say, what's immodest? She has knowledge. She's a judge of the Jewish people. You're right. You're right. She got that knowledge that men didn't have, that a lot of men didn't have. So she had super knowledge. Okay. So a guy comes to her and asks a question. Is he allowed to be alone with her? A Jewish guy. Is he allowed to be alone with Devorah when he's asking a question? No. Where did she speak to him? Under a date tree. Why? Wide open. Anybody could see. Oh, that's suppressing women. No, it's not. It's modesty. Man and women cannot, a man and a woman who's not his wife cannot be alone together. And there are a lot of laws governing this. We're not going to go into it. This is just one side point. So now, because the Torah, in Chronicles and in Ezra, seem to say, it's song, who said, if it's talking about instruments, and that's what it's speaking over there, who says it's talking about where they sang? Nobody is saying. So I looked over there. Maybe the commentaries say, how could they be there? I'm not saying it's not a question. I have to see what it means. But from the context I saw, it can't mean that because I know other information. But okay, let's see. I don't know everything. I'm not an expert in the Chronicles and in Ezra. So let's see. Commentaries don't say boo. They don't say anything. Not the Radak, not the Malbim, not Rashi, not the Metzudas David, not the Metzudas Sio, not the Abarbanel. These are the greatest commentaries we have in Tanakh. They don't say anything. Now, what does that tell you if they don't say anything? That this isn't a question. That's what it tells you. Because by Devorah, everybody asks the question. It's obvious. It's an obvious question. So over here, what happened? Obviously, it's not a question. Why isn't it a question? Because the women either they weren't there, which they shouldn't have been there in general. And even if they were there, it's talking about musical instruments. And that the men, the Levites, were playing the instruments. The Levites were singing. Oh, but you tell me, this person was also there, had 14 kids. 3 of them were women. So they're also singing. But who says? Who says that? Nobody says that. You say that because you have an agenda. You want to show women sing in front of men, even in the temple. Not true. It's not true. And the text doesn't bear that out. Not in English, and certainly not in Hebrew. It says about song, but who says they sang? Song over here means they played instruments. That's what it means. See, one of my personal pet peeves, you're going to say, why is he screaming at us? Because one of my personal pet peeves is I don't like people misrepresenting what the Torah says. I don't like them turning into a pretzel. First of all, I can't read Hebrew. They're like, is that the right translation? That's a good question. Is it the right translation? It's the right translation, but that's not what it means. It can mean different things. But if you look at the context, Coffman says 98% of all the answers to these questions are in context. So if you look in context, they're playing instruments. Instruments of song. Now, I could think maybe they also sang. If the Levites are singing, why aren't the women singing? Because the women are not going to sing in front of Levites in the temple. Or the Torah is going to say it's only their husbands. It's only their kids. That could be another answer. It's only their kids. And if it's only their kids and they're related, that's not a problem. But if it's an aunt or an uncle, that would be a problem. How do I know? Because it's what the Talmud tells me. You can't listen to a woman's voice, even if she's your aunt. Even if she's your cousin. Doesn't matter if they got their period or not. Irrelevant. But you can't listen to them. That's what the halach is. Also, what happened over here? So either you tell me they didn't sing, or you tell me it's only their own family, immediate family. And if it's their immediate family, then men and women can sing together. Not a problem, as long as the wife didn't get her period. If her kids got a period, or the girls got their period, so what? That doesn't stop the father from hearing them sing, or the father singing. It's not a problem. It's only for women singing in front of men. So if that would be the case, okay, so then she wouldn't be able to sing. Fine. Right? So if you're going to tell me it's a family thing, that makes sense. But it's only the nuclear family. If it's not the nuclear family, then they're not singing. But it says song. Right? You're going to get caught up in what it says, not what it means. Because even if they're there, which is hard to imagine, that's why there was a separation in the temple in the first place. That's where we know men and women are supposed to be separate. Not just a made-up thing. Men and women are supposed to be separate. Where do we learn it out from? From the temple itself. From the structure of the temple. There was an Ezra's Nashim. There was a women's section. So men and women should be able to concentrate on their prayers not to be together. So, okay, that makes sense now. If that's true, how are you telling me men and women are together singing together? That goes against that whole concept what happened in the temple. Oh, it's a good question. Yeah, so give me an answer. Anyone want to send me an answer? Send me an answer. Because the reality is they never would have been together. When the Levites sang, the women were there. They weren't there. They heard, but they weren't there. And they can sing as much as they want because they're not going to hear them. Right? That's the whole point. Right? That's the whole point over here. Right? So, I just want to point out, and I think one of my Q&As, or maybe even Tanakh Talk, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I'll flush it out more, right? But, as we always say, and, I'm not, whatever, I didn't think it would go this far. But someone who's got an agenda, they have an agenda. That's your definition. That's what if you know other information, what they said can't be true. Unless it's under whatever, extraordinary circumstances. It's not going to be a normal thing, an everyday thing. But Miriam sang, you're right. And even if she sang in front of men, what could my simple answer be? Torah wasn't given yet. Torah's not given yet. You're talking about the singing at the sea. Is the Torah given yet? Nope. Now, you want to tell me they kept the Torah beforehand? Okay, that's an issue. But at this point, the Torah's not given. So I can say, not a problem at all. Can answer it that way. But even if you want to say, well, it doesn't matter. What if she kept the Torah? What if this? What if that? So I can say, who says she sang in front of men? She sang. Who says the men were there? Maybe she went to her own corner and sang with the women. They made their own thing. Men couldn't hear. Now, it says there she sang. Right? I just want to point out, when the Torah says something, the Torah does not give definitions. When the Torah says, don't steal, don't kill, don't murder, don't do any of these things, we're not given any information what any of it means. Totally not given any information. No definition. So you need oral law in order to understand what it means. Fine. But now you're going to tell me, okay, this story happens. We know what happens. We know that Miriam sang with the women. Okay. Does it tell me anything? All it tells me is she sang with the women. And they played instruments. Beautiful. Does it tell me where they were? Doesn't tell me. Doesn't tell me. I have no information. Right? So unless I have a medrash or something saying otherwise, I don't have to assume she sang in front of the men. Now, someone's going to say to me, I can assume that. Okay? But I could answer and say, that's before Torah was given. That's before the Torah was given. I don't have an issue. You want to tell me they kept the Torah before? Right? Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov kept the Torah before. Maybe Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron kept, whatever the Torah was before, whatever level. Right? But again, even if that's the case, and you're going to say that in future men are not going to be allowed to listen to women sing. Okay? Even if I would agree to that, where does it tell me in the text where it just says that women sing, right? Doesn't say where, right? Let's see. Let's look it up. Song of the Sea. It says Miriam the prophetess, chapter 15, verse 26. Verse 20. Again, Exodus chapter 15, verse 20. Miriam the prophetess, sister of Aaron, took the drum in her hand. All the women went forth after her. Oh, where'd she go? Where in the world did she go? Torah doesn't tell me. They went after her with drums and with dances. Right? Miriam spoke up and they said, sing to Hashem, for he is exalted above the arrogant, having hurled the horse with its rider into the sea. So what does it sound like? They sang. Right? But where'd she go? Where did the women go? Yeah, remember, there are 3 million people here. Right? 600,000 men, not including women and children. So where did they go? Obviously, they weren't necessarily in the same place. I can deduce that. Why? Because it says she went forth. What do you mean she went forth? Right? What's the Hebrew over here? What's the Hebrew over here? She went out. Right? Translated, she went forth. Okay. She went out. Where'd she go? Why do I have to assume? Again, if you have an agenda, I could assume this. Why do I have to assume she was in that place? In the exact same place. Maybe she went out, women followed her, and she went to some tree. No one was around, and they all sang, and there were no men around. Why can't I assume that? Oh, because you're a guy, and you want to prove your point. And okay, so whatever I say is not going to matter, right? You have an agenda. Fine. But you're not telling me something that the Torah tells me. So you say, my inference is just as good as yours. But again, I have an out. And my out is very clear. My out is, even if you want to tell me Miriam sang, Torah's not given. They don't have an obligation to abide by this. Torah's not given. But what about Ezra? What about Chronicles? Torah's already been given. True. Torah's already been given. But again, first of all, who says they sang? Right? And second of all, who says they were there at the time? Or that it wasn't their own family doing it. That's what it sounds like. That's exactly what it sounds like. That, this person had 14 kids. 3 of them were women. So women were also there. So who says they sang in front of men? Maybe they only sang in front of their own family. Even if you want to tell me that. That's a viable option. Right? But it is a little bit vague. It's not clear cut. It says they played instruments. It seems like the Levites sang, so you can say they sang and played instruments. So they say the same thing by women. But how could they do that in front of men? They're going to say, because it's allowed. But who says they did? When it says song, it doesn't necessarily mean they sang. Because song over there means they played instruments. That's what it means. Now, you tell me playing instruments means they also sing. I'm not 100% convinced that's the case. There are plenty of things, plenty of music you can listen to. It's instrumentals, no songs. Nobody's singing. But if you tell me the Levites sang, they must have also sang. But see, if it be something so egregious, as that, then wouldn't the Torah tell me? Wouldn't the Torah tell me that? Torah would tell me that. Torah for sure would have told me that. Right? So, if by Devorah, the commentaries go to town and explain how could you do this, what about the laws of modesty and blah, 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 why didn't the commentaries say anything over there? Commentaries are silent. When commentaries are silent and you have a question and nobody asks the question, most likely it's not a question. Because then you're assuming you know more than what the commentaries know. Right? What does King Solomon say in Ecclesiastes? Ein dvar chadash tachas hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. You're not going to think of questions that no one ever thought of before. And if no one ever asked the question, it means it's not a question in different ways. You got to find out what the answer is, but it doesn't mean necessarily it's a question. So over here, same thing. None of the commentaries say anything. I looked around, nothing. So then I said, okay, let's go back. Let's see what's going on. If nobody says nothing, there's not a question. So what's going on? So what's going on, I think, is the fact that it says song and instruments and this and that doesn't mean they sang. That I would say simply. Or you tell me it's all part of the same family, and these girls sang in front of the family. Okay, that's not forbidden. That's totally not forbidden. The wife in front of her husband, if she got a period, different issue. That'd be a different issue. We're not going there. In any case, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the question was, how do we have 5 students? If he's the greatest, he's the exilarch of that generation, how do we have 5 students? Must have more. But we answered that. Right? We answered very simply, students here are primary disciples. If they are primary disciples, then what's going on? Primary disciples means that's what it means. Primary disciples. Doesn't mean they didn't have any other disciples. Right? Now the question is, we asked, not everyone who learns from a righteous person, a rabbinic scholar, is fitting to be called a student. Right now, we're going to go through this. Because included in this idea is the fact that even if you tell me Rabbi Yochanan only had 5 students, that means they were students of his. Meaning that just because somebody learned under someone does not mean that he's considered a student. Right? So let's go back. Somebody's learned for many years under one rabbi, let's say. And they could predict what this rabbi is going to say on this, that, and the other thing. Why? Because they know the way they think. They know their methodology, so to speak. Right? So somebody like that, the methodology, you could probably call the student. Because you know what they're going to say. Right? Now the question is, did you absorb? That's a whole different thing. Knowing what they're going to say is one thing. But the question is, did you absorb their message? Did you exemplify what they said? Right? But Rav said that he heard the name of one of the great rabbis. They called someone a student of his, that he had to learn at least a number of years in order to be called a student. Person heard a few classes, this and that, they're not considered a student. I'm not saying they have to mimic and do everything that the that their teacher, the rabbi, said. Not saying that, but at the same time, person can learn under someone for a number of years, not really be called a student, right? That's the novelty over here. Rabbi Yochanan maybe had thousands of students. Thousands of people came in here as classes. But how many people are really 100% called a student? He's saying over here that not everyone who learns from a righteous person and rabbinic scholar is fitting to be called their student. Says Rav Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik of blessed memory, otherwise known as the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav, someone said, I learned by your father for 3 years. Right, I learned by your father for 3 years. So he considered himself a student. Totally considered himself a student. So the Brisker Rav laughed. You learned by my father for 3 years? Doesn't make you a student. He says you have to learn by him many, many years. You got to absorb what he said. Right? Totally have to absorb what he said. 3 years, not enough. Right? Totally not enough. So what do we see? Being a student means you have to absorb a lot of what the rabbi said. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean person is a carbon copy. Right? Doesn't necessarily mean that. At the same time, it means you absorbed what they said. Right? Famous story we mentioned before with the Baal Tanya. You have a student want to go to university, and he tells the student, you got to be careful because you go to university, there's a lot of heresy there, whatever. So he said to the Baal Tanya, he said, listen, I sat in your base medrash. I learned by you for many years. It didn't make me so righteous. If I go there, it's not going to make me so bad. Right? The Baal Tanya said, you're making a mistake. You're making a big mistake. Why? Because in order to become impure, all you have to do is touch. Touch a dead animal, you're impure. Right? You want to be holy? You have to absorb. Right? Now, what's the point of the story that I want to take out here? Because I mentioned the story many times. The point is that this student of the Baal Tanya could have been learning by him for years. But guess what? The message of the Baal Tanya didn't get to him. He didn't become a true student. Now, to become a true student, person has to look at his rabbi as someone that is like an angel. Does that mean they're perfect? Doesn't mean they're perfect. Right? If they have bad character traits, can't learn by somebody. You need good character traits. Right? Derech eretz kidma l'Torah. Good character traits come before Torah. How can a person learn Torah and be a shwep? My language. How can they have bad character traits? Right? I can speak about this till tomorrow, but I'm not going to get so far off topic because I've spoken about it before. Right? And that is, if a rabbi's doing certain things, then, everyone's got an evil inclination. So if they're doing certain things, obviously look dicey, right? As the English would say, right? Or they look kind of fishy or even better, you get someone who's a blowhard, right? Someone got a big mouth, even bigger than me. Got a big mouth, and he calls out Rabbi Singer, and he calls out Rabbi Skobag, and, calls me out and whatever. I said, wow, that's how a rabbi someone asked me this. If you disagree with someone, it's one thing. Call them out on social media, unless they're a heretic. It's like, come on, debate me. Come on, debate me. Like Asher makes a moron. Come debate me. Why would I debate you? You're not worth on the totem pole you'd stand on because you got no credentials. You got zero credentials, right? But you got to knock around people that have credentials. Come on, right? There's a limit. As we say, yesh gvul. There are boundaries. There are boundaries over here, right? So that being the case, I'm not going to take what they say, seriously. But someone is calling out other people and they're making fun of them and saying this and saying that, saying where they're not heretics. And they're doing good things, right? So there's a problem. Someone asked me, how can a rabbi do this? He's got to be held to a higher standard, true. So how he get up on his, on his soapbox and start yelling and screaming? What happened? What happened to derech eretz? What happened to proper character traits? Oh, good question. Legitimate question. So what happened? Can't listen to a word this person says. Totally not. You want to disagree, you can disagree. Right? If you're on the level of disagree, good. But you have to be respectful. You have to be respectful. If you're not going to be respectful, then keep your mouth shut. But if you're going to go out there and hammer people that are doing good work, and again, we're talking about in a case, we're talking about a case that they're not heretics. What gives you right to blast them? Not only that, you spoke Lashon Hara. You libeled them, Motzi Shemra, you lose your portion of the world to come. But with all that, how are you going to do tshuva now? How is this stupid blowhard going to do tshuva? How is he going to repent? Millions of people saw it. Millions of people saw it. You got to say he puts out a public apology. Not everyone's going to see it. That's why, I mentioned many times, persons on social media, you got to be extremely careful. Extremely careful. Right? You want to make sure whatever you post, whatever you comment, no one's going to be able to say boo. Now, if someone misinterprets it, you don't want to get in a whole Lashon Hara fest and all that, but you got to be very, very, very careful. Right? And somebody put up a post a number of years ago, and basically, a very simple inference in the post was, anyone who teaches Torah and takes money is like a terrible thing. It's like a terrible thing. Now, that's not what the person said, but that's what was in. That was a very simple inference. Very, very simple inference. So I contacted this person offline, and I said, you got to be careful. Someone already made the comment, so I didn't have to make the comment. Someone made the comment. So I told him, I said, listen, I think I understand what you meant, but you got to be very, very careful, what you put out there. So a person apologized. I didn't mean you and this. I said I wasn't offended, right? But I said I could understand how people could be offended, right? You hear such a thing, right? Or, this thing could be, it's an inference, so to speak. So you can understand. I can understand how people look at it. Definitely could understand. So that next week, I did a video on Tanakh Talk on, are you allowed to charge for teaching Torah? And that was the base for that. Right? But in the end, again, obviously not the topic for now, but the point is that when a person puts something out there, you gotta be careful. Not only that, you gotta think once, twice, three times, because A, you have to have eyes in the back of your head. You have to know, someone makes a statement, someone puts something out there, you have to know, what's behind it. Because if you answer innocently, you give an answer. Someone put up a question, about this whole thing about a woman's hair. A woman singing. So I put something out there that I thought was a good answer. I put it out there. Now, was I thinking they're going to be these feminists that are going to come and attack it? Not, I wasn't really thinking. I just said, I think this is a good answer. This will answer the question. It gives a different, interesting perspective. Okay? Right? I think it would turn into this, this whole thing coming back and saying, come on, wake up, this, that. People saying things, and what are you living in, the first century, like where we've gone, etc., that this is the real world, blah, blah, blah. Right? Obviously trying to prove what I said was wrong. Now again, so that might have been my bad. Why should I have answered that? I said, well, you had an answer. It was a good answer. I think it was a good answer. And someone takes it out, I'm not saying they took it out of context, but, they try to say, oh, see, this proves my point. See, this proves this. Doesn't prove that. You want to say it does. Right? But it doesn't. And then it starts the whole thing. I didn't disrespect anybody here. I just gave what I thought was the answer. And then back and forth. Oh, look at this verse. Look at this. This is what it means. So I just said that's not what it means. That's what it means, whatever. So you got to be careful. right? But here the important thing to take away is, as the Brisker Rav said, someone who learned by his father, of Chaim Brisker, is only considered a student if they learned by him many years. They have to be by him many years. If they weren't by him for many years, you can't consider yourself a student. So there are great rabbis today. They may have hundreds, thousands of students listening to their classes. But the question is, who's really holding by what they say? Who's really going to be called over here 100% a fitting student? So what do we say over here? We said that even though Rabbi Yochanan probably had thousands of students, there are only 5 he really trusted and said, these are really my students. Everyone else that listened to his class, in his classes and his discourses and all that, who says they were bona fide students? They listened to what he said. Okay. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean they were a bona fide student. Right? Just like the Brisker Rav said, you want to learn by my father, number of years before you can call the student. Many, many years. To actually be called a student. Doesn't mean he didn't ask him questions, whatever. I see by my Rebbe, he's got 8 volumes printed, question and answers, different things. And, he's written many, many, many books. How many people today, real students of his? A handful. Not by the masses. Someone who really holds, in and out of what he says. I'm not saying, it's more than a handful, but I'm saying, there going to be hundreds of thousands? No. Because, you want to be a student, in a certain way, you got to drink the Kool-Aid. Right? In other words, whatever they tell you, this is what I'm going to do. You ask them everything about everything, and, you take the good answers, with the hard answers, and that's it. Right? And that's what you do. You're not wishy-washy. You don't pick and choose who you ask questions to. Now, sometimes, you ask a rabbi questions. I'm not an expert in that field. You're going to ask someone else. So I've been spoiled for 25 years. More than 25 years, 26 years, actually. I can ask one person anything I want. Because he's got super knowledge. He's got more knowledge than anyone. Okay? Right? So I don't do anything without asking him. Do this, do that, the other thing. Right? But there'll be people that will ask him questions. That someone who asks a question doesn't mean they're a student. You're going to say, but I asked him a question. So what? So what about other things he says? Oh, I'm not interested in that. Or I'm not interested in this. He asked the question. Very good. Maybe you listen to some lectures. Okay. Does that make someone a bona fide student? Right? Someone will tell me, come on, I've seen a lot of your videos on YouTube. Okay. They know all my jokes. Right? They know all my story, a lot of my stories. Okay. Does that make them a bona fide student? Doesn't necessarily make someone a bona fide student. Right? A groupie, as I would say. Right? Doesn't make them a bona fide student. So what if they listened? Right? The question is, what do they do? Do they incorporate what they said? What the person said? Do they ask them? Do they ask them everything about whatever? I do have people, come to me and ask me all kinds of things. But to be a real bona fide student, it's going to be a handful. The ones who are, there day in and day out, so to speak. So a person over here, as we said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai could have had thousands of students. Could have thousands of people listening to his lectures. Great. But how many people really followed what he said? I joke and I say, my Rebbe's synagogue, he holds, and he's a minority opinion without going into politics and other things. He holds in an Israeli election in Jerusalem, we shouldn't vote. Now, it's a minority opinion. So, it's funny. Many people in his synagogue, they all vote. They all vote. So, most of them. Most of them. So I always joke, like, come on. Either you're a real student or you're not. Doesn't mean you can't pray there. Doesn't mean you can't learn there, right? But they're gonna say, "Well, he's my Rebbe." There are things that, let's say, he takes on himself. He says, "I'm doing this as my own stringency." Okay, doesn't mean I have to hold by it, right? But if there are things that he does, that if you're a real student, that's what you do also, right? I'm not saying everything. I'm not saying by my Rebbe, every last thing I do. Many things I do. There are many things. Vast majority. And if I don't, it's a lack on me, not certainly on him, right? But the point is, as I tell people, when it came to voting, I said, listen, I don't pick and choose. I ask him all my questions. He told me not to vote. I don't vote. He tells me to do this. That's what I do. So, that's the thing. You can't, it's another thing. I get these questions. Somebody asked me recently in a Q&A a certain question, and I didn't deal with it. Right? There were two questions, actually, I didn't deal with. One I'm actually going to deal with in one of my Q&As. But there's another question I'm not going to deal with. I'm not going to speak about it in public. Other people speak about it quite a bit. Someone comes and says, but this rabbi speaks about it. So I don't speak about it. What do you want from me? I'm not speaking about it. It's not a topic I want to speak about. My right. But he speaks about it, so listen to him. Doesn't mean you have to listen to me. But I'm not going to deal with that in public. If someone has spoken about a topic, ad nauseum, and I'm not saying ad nauseum like, oh, what a waste of time. No, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. So if this person hit it from that angle, this angle, the other angle, blah, 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 why do I have to speak about it? You hit every angle. I need to speak about it. If I felt I had something to add, maybe I would. If I don't have anything to add, why would I speak about it? So what's your opinion? This particular thing, okay, it's forbidden, you got to be careful, this, that, and the other thing. It's a tremendous thing. Tremendous sin. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I have to speak about it. Why do I have to speak about it? Other people speak about it. Fine. Speak about it once, twice, 50 times, 100 times. They speak about it a lot. Good. So let them speak about it. Doesn't mean I have to speak about it. But the person's got to be careful also. See, I'll deal with people's questions. And someone says, well, but this rabbi says differently. Okay. Now, it depends. If it's opinion among rabbinical authorities, it's one thing. Right? But if you're rabbi shopping, you say, well, I'm asking you this question because this rabbi said like this. Okay, I had somebody ask me, whatever, so many questions, and almost every single time they say, yeah, but what about this? What about this rabbi? So what are you asking me for? You ask a rabbi a question in Jewish law. You're not shopping around for answers. The whole point, if you ask the rabbi an opinion, a question, and then you go to ask another rabbi, that's forbidden. That you're not allowed to do unless the first rabbi made an egregious mistake. If he didn't make an egregious mistake, and then they come to you, that's rabbi shopping. That you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to get a second opinion. Right? Unless you think something is missing. Right? Or you think that he made a big mistake. But that you're not allowed to do. Right? So someone comes to me and says, yeah, but I heard it like this. Well, this rabbi said like that. Okay. So my rabbi was not like that. But again, it's about some people come and they're rabbi shopping. So let them rabbi shop. They're not coming to me for that. Because if I see and I sniff, that's what they're doing. I'm not. Whatever. I got stuff to do. I don't have to answer people's questions. I got stuff to do. You gonna waste my time? You gonna say, oh, but I heard this, that, and the other. If you tell me, listen, what you said is wrong because of this and that, okay? Or you say their higher authorities disagree, okay? But if my opinion's based on other higher authorities, so what are you arguing with me? My Rebbe doesn't agree with everybody in a lot of things. That's fine. He's got real big shoulders. He's the Torah giant of this generation. Nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. You want to argue with him? You think you're on the level to argue with him? Think again. Think 3 times. And if he goes against other certain Rabbanim, okay, he's got the shoulders to do so. And if I hold by him and I say, okay, that's what I do. Yeah, but these other rabbis, okay, what are you asking me? Again, it's the same thing. If I'm going to hold by what he says, I'm going to say it's a minority opinion. Okay? But he calls it the way he sees it. When I ask him, that's what he tells me. That's it. You want to tell me the other rabbinical authorities disagree? Not going to disagree. Not going to disagree. But you see, I want to make one thing clear. And that is, you don't rabbi shop. You don't pick and choose. Oh, I'm going to go to this rabbi for these questions because he's lenient. I'm going to go to this rabbi for these questions because whatever. That's not the way it works. I mean, I'm not saying people don't do it, but that's not the way it should work. Totally not the way it should work. But probably got to be careful. But when you ask a rabbi a question and you're there to rabbi shop, you're wasting this time. Right? I'm going to tell you straight out. It's a transgression to do it. You're not allowed to do it unless that person made an unbelievable mistake. If they made an unbelievable mistake, there's a clear-cut Mishna they missed. Or they made a mistake and, okay, that's a different thing. That's something egregious. But if it's just saying, wow, this person has a different opinion, so what do you think about that? Then why are you asking the question? If you already know there are different opinions, and then you say, well, what's your opinion? That's why I say, if a person wants to convert, I say, you can't suck from 2 cows, my Rebbe says. Meaning, if you're going to ask a question, you're going to have a rabbi, that's who you go to. You don't pick and choose who you go to. We agree 95% of all things. We have different, maybe different ideas in Jewish philosophy about the state of Israel, about some other things, different customs, whatever. 95% we agree. But if you're going to go from one rabbi to the other, you're going to get messed up. You're going to get mixed up. This rabbi will say this, someone else will say that. You want to stay on the path with one person. Doesn't have to be me. It can be other people. Doesn't matter. Right? But the point is you stay on the path with one person, so they'll give you direction straight. And if they don't know, they'll ask someone else. But if you go around getting different philosophical outlooks and this and that, you're going to get burnt. Right? It's what I say. If you have too many hands in the kitchen, you get burnt. Doesn't mean, these are the only classes you can listen to. Plenty of other classes the person can listen to. But if you're going to ask, well, this rabbi said this, okay. But you hold like this, yeah. Okay. But I'm not going to answer a question, why did this person do this or why did this person do that? Or the other thing. If someone says, well, circumcision is so important, blah, blah, why did this, do this or that? Okay, that's a different issue. If it's something that's a basic thing in Jewish law and you say, hey, this rabbi didn't do it or whatever. That's a different issue. Right? Rabbi shopping, as most people can now be aware, bothers me. The one thing that bothers me. Many things that bother me. That's, you're just wasting people's time. If you have a question, they give you an answer, you have to take the answer. Unless there's an issue with it. They missed something egregious. But you can't say, I'm getting a second opinion. That is forbidden. You're going to say, I want a more lenient opinion. Sorry, that's the opinion I'm giving. Right? I'd say next time you ask the question, go somewhere else. But you can't pick and choose who you go to here. That definitely not allowed to do. You don't like the answer. I want a better answer. Another thing, by the way, I'll just throw this out there. Someone puts something out there, unless it's heretical. There should be respect. And in social media, you see there's a lot of disrespect. There's a tremendous amount. There's a tremendous amount of disrespect. The point here, as we mentioned about, rabbis who you're going to go to, right, should have made clear. But obviously, it has to be someone who's holding by Jewish law. Right? Reform and conservative rabbis not holding by Jewish law. Whatever they say goes. If they feel like it, they don't feel like it. It's not based in Jewish law. Totally not based in Jewish law. Right? Again, and not all Orthodox rabbis are the same in knowledge. There's some that, they mean well, but they don't have the world's greatest knowledge. They could be much younger, etc. So you got to be careful. And just because they're Orthodox doesn't necessarily mean they're really Orthodox either, right? So you gotta be careful. You gotta see where they learned, who they learned under, who they go to for questions, different things, the whole process. But obviously, as we mentioned, you don't want to go to someone who's a travesty of a mockery of Hashem, right? And their whole goal is, they're part of a movement. Their whole goal is to uproot Torah. If the whole goal is to uproot Torah, you're not going to sit there and ask them questions. You're not going to go there. Now, for some people, going reform or conservative is a stepping stone, right? In other words, they didn't know any better. That's where they started, right? If that's where they started, okay. But who says you have to stay there? You're not going to stay there. It's certainly not going to be good. They're not going to, they're not going to give you the guidance that you need. And it goes against probably everything that the Torah says in the first place. And sometimes people get caught up in this where, I think I mentioned this before, or I mentioned other classes, that, had somebody that I think was going through a reform conversion and understood, at least that's what they said, they understood that the conversion was bogus. They understood that really, that the conversion is really not going to be good, but they were so caught up, and this boggled my mind. They were so caught up in the fact that they spent money. They could have spent, $500, $1,000 more. And they said, but I've already paid the money, so why shouldn't I finish? And my answer was, because you don't believe in it, and the paper that it's written on is not worth anything. So why would you finish? They said, but I paid money. I couldn't get this out of the person's mind. So I finally said, okay, so let's say you gave money to a bad charity. Take a loss. I don't care if it's $2,000, $5,000, $100, $1,000. Take it as a loss. I gave money to a bad place. I lost. I lost.
You need to know when to walk away. Yeah.
Right. You know when to walk away. This person couldn't walk away. But he didn't, he could have been lying to me, which very well could be. Right. Or he just didn't like my stand on it. Right. But in the end, I said, it's not worth the paper it's written on. You know that. He goes, you're right. But I paid money. So either he's lying to me or he's got a screw loose. Because who cares you paid money? You know it's heresy. You know it's wrong. You know it's not going to get you anywhere. You know no one's going to accept it in the Orthodox world. Yeah, but I paid money for it. Next. Like after a number of times, I just, okay, so you paid for it. That's the last I heard of the person.
Yeah.
So
don't pay
so
even more by arguing the point. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they wanted to do. They weren't interested in me. Fine. But if you're going to admit, and this is like the kicker, if you're going to admit it's not worth it, then why are you doing it? Right? It's the same thing. Women say, without even getting the whole talk about women, there's some feminists out there say, I want to learn Talmud. Right? I want to learn Talmud. Nothing wrong with me learning Talmud. Okay. But the Talmud says explicitly that if a woman learns, it's not good for them. It's not good for them spiritually. Doesn't mean they don't have the intellect, per se. Right? Different issues. But, so what's the answer? The answer is the Talmud says it's not good for you to do, and you want to learn the Talmud. Why do you want to learn it? Checkmate. Because they no, that you have to understand that piece of Talmud in context, and blah blah blah. But they're telling you it's not good for you. The rabbis that you want to learn from say don't do it, but I want to do it anyway. That means you have an agenda. That's exactly what it means. It means you don't care. I want to do it anyway. That's not Torah anymore. Torah is I follow it, I keep it, I do whatever it says. And there are things that might be difficult, okay, but I still have to do it. You want to eat 35 pounds of matzah, like, 15 kilo matzah in 35 seconds and whistle Dixie and do the moonwalk? Yeah. God says, shut up and eat the matzah. That's what you got to do. No, but it's too crunchy. Oh, whatever. These are things you got to do. Some things you might find easier, things more difficult. Whatever it is. The Torah, I've said once, twice, 100 times, the Torah is not a pretzel. You cannot turn it into a pretzel. If you tell me I'm going to do it anyway, okay, you have an agenda. Good. Am I going to convince you of that agenda? No. Most likely. Okay. Right? That's why in the Haggadah, by the evil son, you blunt his teeth, because he's not looking for an answer. You're not looking for an answer. So whatever answer I give to this ultra-feminist about women singing in front of men, it's not going to help. I know it's not going to help. It's like getting into the spiral you can't get out of. It's like you're in quicksand, you can't get out of. Okay. I get my last answer. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going further. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. So anyway, you want to be a real student, you got to take the good, you got to take the good with the bad, so to speak. Even if things are hard to hear, and there are many things I heard from my Rebbe were hard to hear. I'm going to speak about that in the next Mishna, right? But hard to hear. But guess what? I heard it anyway. I did what he said. Now, one other point I'll make is that, and we've spoken about this also before, the point is that if you listen to rabbinic guidance, you don't go wrong. You don't lose out. Now, what that means is you may not come out smelling like a rose, but you don't lose out. Now, there are many times I listened to my Rebbe, and only thing I could do when it came to certain family things was damage control. That's it. In other words, the only question is, how much I'm going to get hammered. How much am I going to get hammered? Now, someone here brings out a point, I guess, before we go further, talking about reform and conservative conversions. Question is, conversion shouldn't cost money. Now, why do people charge? Now, a basin, there are some basins that charge. Some charge more, some charge less, so to speak. But guess what you're paying for? You know what you're paying for? Forget administration costs and other things. You know what you're paying for? You're paying for their time. Now, let's say you go in front of a rabbinical court. Rabbis there take time. They take their time. Now, you might be in there for half an hour, 45 minutes. A person in general would not complain. I mean, they might, right? If they go into a lawyer, the lawyer has to write up some documents. You're in there for 45 minutes, the lawyer gives you a bill, $300. You're not even going to flinch. You're not going to negotiate. That's what the fee is. That's what the fee is. You're paying him for his time. Plumber comes in. Now, who's the only people that haggle with money? Jews. Right? You got someone comes in, a plumber comes in. I had someone fix a washing machine once. Came, fixed the problem. Great. Right? 2 days, 3 days later, another problem. So a guy comes back and he looks at it and he says, yeah, it's going to cost me X amount. I said, but you just fixed this other thing. He said, yeah, there was no connection though. Right? There's no connection to this and that. There were 2 different things. One was a belt and one was something else. Whatever. One, I think the heating element burnt out, and one was a belt or whatever it was. So I had to pay twice. And unrelated. Right? Non-related. Now, if it's the same thing and the guy didn't fix it properly, okay, he's liable to fix it. You take your car to a mechanic, for instance. They transmission, something else, whatever it is, they say they fixed it. And it didn't get fixed. They have to fix it. Now, it could be they need another part, something else happened. They could charge you for that, right? But they're liable. Now, if anyone ever took a course online, whatever the course is, it could be a $47 course, could be a $500 course, could be a $1,000 course. That's the price. Now, they may give you a break and they say, oh, you can pay it in installments, this and that. College course, any type of course. You want to be a graphic artist, take courses in that. In drawing, you take an SAT course, a college, a test for the sake of getting into college. You go to someone to tutor you. You don't think they're going to charge? Of course they're going to charge, right? It may charge $30 an hour, may charge $50 an hour. Time is worth money. Right? Time is worth something. Someone can say, wow, they've been giving these classes for years. They could probably do it in their sleep. So what? What do I care how well they know it and they can do it in their sleep? That means they should do it for free? Why should they do it for free? Problem is, we're going to get this Mishna when I'm about 108, right? They say, but Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't charge. He didn't charge teaching Torah in the desert. Right? So it says you should really, not charge. True. But let's call a spade a spade. Moshe Rabbeinu was very rich. God made him rich through the tablets, through the shards of the tablets. He didn't have to charge. Right? People use that, I've heard that a number of times. People say, see, he didn't do it. Yeah, but he didn't need to. He didn't need to. So again, when it comes to anything else, I have a friend of mine who's a computer consultant. And he said, if I walk into someone's house and they couldn't figure out how to turn on a computer, I'm charging them $100. Because they were stupid. It's not my fault. I went out there. It's my time. Time is worth something. Right? But when it comes to something like this, it's some sort of cognitive dissonance that says I should not have to pay. Right? Because the church pays for a lot of things. Yeah, because the church does a lot of things. They get a lot of money. People donate, whatever it is. So okay, so they can do things. They got more money than who knows what. So okay, that's one thing. That's one thing. But people who make an effort and whatever, their time is worth something. You might say, okay, how much is it worth? How much is time worth? So that depends. Imagine, I'll just throw this out there. Someone who has a PhD, right? Pilot higher and deeper, or Papa has dough, right? Someone get a PhD. Someone's got a PhD in physics. And he says, you know what, I'm going to tutor you in physics. You think he's going to charge you $20 an hour? I don't think he's going to charge you $20 an hour. He's going why do doctors make so much money? Because of all the effort they put into studying. You're paying for their knowledge. Whatever you say, they memorize, however many years, doesn't matter. You're going to pay through the nose for their knowledge. And the fact that they're going to hopefully get you better and make you healthy. You're not going to haggle with that. Why would anyone haggle with that? Right? You're going to say it's too expensive. My insurance should cover it. Okay, there are other issues. But when it comes to online classes, for instance, forget about the conversion itself. We'll get to that. Right? Online classes, I don't think anyone should have an issue. Any online class you're going to pay for. Doesn't matter what it's in. Whether it's in basket weaving, learning how to fix a car, learning how to play an instrument, all these things, you're not going to do it for free. There are things for free. I'm not going to say none. There are things that people won't charge for. Okay. Now, when it comes to the conversion itself, you got the maintenance of the mikvah. Person's going to go in. You got the rabbinic, the rabbinic judges there. They're coming in their own time. Some charge more, some charge less, some charge whatever you can afford, whatever. Why should that be free? They're giving up their time. Their time is worth something. And if someone has a PhD in Judaism, you're going to pay for that. I'm not saying you have to pay through the nose. I'm not going to say it has to be so radically expensive. Right? I was once accused, being an extortionist. I was like, an extortionist? I was like, come on. If I was charging $300 an hour to give a class, that would be extortion. But I think what I do is more important than what a lawyer does. I'm helping people in more ways than what a lawyer does. With other people, yeah. And if I would charge that, I'd be by myself. Just me, myself, and I, all three of us. Right? But why should teachers who are doing a lot of self-sacrifice, right, in order to help others, why is that looked at as extortion? Why is that looked at as they should do it for free? Someone, I've had Jews tell me, why are you scamming off of non-Jews? Why don't you work with Jews? I said, I love non-Jews. I said, except the ones in my own family. But again, why should that be done? I like to hear a good explanation why that should be done. The Code of Jewish Law says I'm allowed to charge. Totally allowed to charge. Right? He says you can't be exorbitant. It has to be within reason. Right? But I will make a disclaimer. And my disclaimer is, anyone who doesn't have money, I'm not going to charge them. So I don't run what I do like a business. If I did, I'd be broke. I'd definitely be broke. Right? But at the same time, if someone has, they should give. Because time is worth something. I speak to someone on the phone. Right? If I speak to someone on the phone, I'm not running the clock. I'm not saying, okay, I just spoke to you for an hour. It's going to be X amount. That's not the way I run things. Now, other people may do things differently. Okay? But time is worth something, right? I want people to understand There's no difference with someone giving over information. There's no such thing as someone giving over information. They should be paid for it. Why shouldn't they be paid for it? Right? If someone, a Jew has an obligation to give, 10%, right? They have to give 10% of their money, right? But the point, again, you want to, a person wants to convert, you have to live amongst Jews. You got to live in that community. You can't have a virtual community, right? That's what one of the things is trying to fix up with no hides, to actually have places for them to come and to actually learn real places and not just doing things online. Okay, but when it comes to this, you can't have a virtual community. For sure you can't. Teaching what I do is very strange because, it is virtual and it's not in person. True. But at the same time, it helps a lot of people. It's not the norm. It's definitely not the norm. Right? But at the same time, a person's going to have to move. They want to convert, you have to move. Right? You have to live, amongst Jews. So, so again, that's, it's not only that, but what are you paying someone for? You're paying for their time, but you're paying for what they know. Now, the problem is, as I've heard a number of times, went to this Reform rabbi, conservative rabbi, they paid all this money, they got nothing. They got a big goose egg over here. And that's tragic. Right? That 100% is tragic. But, I'll throw this question out there. Someone has been learning 20 years, 25 years, whatever it is, and they have world-class knowledge. You know what that's worth? That's worth millions. Now, a person's not going to pay millions. Unless they have money, they love the person, going to help them, whatever. But they're not going to pay that. Fine. I want people to realize they have to respect the knowledge. They absolutely have to respect the knowledge. And the problem is, there are too many people out there that think they know something when they don't. And they just throw things out there, they quote, they have no idea what in the world they're talking about. They don't show humility. First of all, not only that, to call you names or whatever, it's part of being a rabbi, getting trashed all, a lot of times. Okay, that's part of the course. My Rebbe would say, if you're a rabbi of a congregation, they're trying to run you out of town, you're not doing your job right. Because you're not there to just say, oh, everything's good, don't worry about it, whatever. Sometimes you got to be hard. Sometimes you got to be hot. Or, as we say in Boston, got to be hot, got to be wicked hot, But, at the same time, you're paying for knowledge. Knowledge is worth something. Someone spent 20 years, 25 years, whatever it is, 15 years, but they have real knowledge. They have real knowledge. Why shouldn't someone help them out? Why shouldn't someone pay for that? It's cognitive dissonance. A plumber you would pay, right? A computer consultant you would pay. Someone makes you, I don't know, they make you a bookcase, right? Something like that. These things you're going to pay for. So anything online, any online education, you're not going to pay for? Of course you're going to pay for. Maybe you get some things for free, fine. But what's the other argument? The other argument is, what do I need you for? I get plenty of these things for free. Okay. So get it for free. Right? Who said, is anyone putting a gun to anyone's head saying they have to listen to me? No. Certainly not. You want to get all this stuff for free. Fine. There's plenty of good things out there. I'm not saying not. Definitely not. Right? It doesn't mean conversion has to cost a ton. Doesn't mean that. Totally doesn't mean that. But a person has to realize, you have Beit Dins, you have rabbinical court. They have to function. They certainly have to function. Litigants come in, they have to pay. They have to pay a certain amount. Again, it goes to the upkeep of the Beit Din. The rabbi should get whatever they're getting. But within reason. I don't see there's anything wrong with it. Someone's gonna come and say, listen, they have totally no. Let's say like this. Someone's gonna listen, I'm having a lot of difficulty, this, that. You have no money. What's the rabbinical court gonna say? You first of all, you have to move to a Jewish community. So what are you gonna do about conscience? What are you gonna do? Let's say Passover. Passover just passed. Everything on Passover is like 3 times the price. What are you gonna say? I'm not gonna keep Passover because it's too expensive. People make it. I don't know how they make it, but whatever. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But at the same time, they want to see that you're stable. You can, live in a community doesn't mean a person can't get helped out, but our job, and I'll get in trouble for saying this because someone hammered me once on this, and our job is not to help out all the non-Jews in the world. Let the non-Jews help non-Jews, right? Someone will say, you owe me. You should help me move. Why should I help you move to a Jewish community? Why are you going to be a burden on us? If you already moved to the Jewish community, you're having difficulty, Jewish people help you out. But the fact that you're struggling now, who says I have to help that? Why do I have to work with non-Jews to help that? You'll say, they're serious, they're this. I don't know, who says that's my job? And I got someone told me all these credentials, they had to this, to that, the other thing, and the Jewish people owe me. What do the Jewish people owe? You're a light unto nations, you're right. 100% right. I'll give you a case in point. Before I even got into conversion, many, many years ago, sitting on the rabbinical court, my Rebbe, and someone came in, dressed like a Satmar Chassid, big hat, long coat, the whole 9 yards, and wanted to convert. Now, the problem was, this person was living in Europe, living in different places in Europe. The person didn't work. So he'd been around collecting money to support himself. So not only did the rabbinical court not like the answers that they got, why they wanted to convert and different things, but as my Rebbe told me, he said, listen, this person is going to be a burden to us. 100% is going to be a burden to us. So who says we have to deal with him? Because that we have to be all inclusive. Why? He's going to be a burden to the Jewish people. So my Rebbe said, who says we have to help him? Who says that's our obligation? Not to mention other things the person said, which I'm not going to go into. Right? But, so I took that and said, okay, there are certain things a person has to show. And I had someone hammer me, and I said, I made very clear that the non-Jews should help non-Jews. That's not my obligation. You're serious about conversion, okay. Right? But who says we have to take on an extra burden? If a person's having difficulties, one thing. But if we know they're having difficulty now, I have to help them move. I have to help them this, I have to help them with that. They have to help themselves first. It's difficult, it's this, it's that. You're right, there are a lot of different things going on. But who says that's, we have so many people we have to help ourselves. I see day in and day out. People collecting money, marry off kids, someone died, orphan, like all kinds of things. Day in and day out. And, we have an obligation to help our own. We 100% have an obligation, to help our own. And that's not being selfish. Non-Jews help their own also. What makes us any different? You're a light unto nations. I have to help the whole world. I really have to help the whole world. That's my obligation. The whole thing. So someone says, what about charity? Someone asks, what about charity? What about it? Where does charity start? You know where charity starts? Starts with my own house. Starts with my own family. That's where charity starts. So let's say you're helping out, let's say you got a brother, a brother-in-law, whatever. You have a family member that's having difficulty. Who are you going to help first? Who are you going to help first in the community? What's your obligation? Your brother. Immediate family. Which in a certain way, now I'm on this topic, it boggles the mind. Because there'll be people that have means that'll help everyone else except their own family. Why? I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer. I don't even have a bad answer. Right? They don't help their own first. That's our obligation. Now, once you help your immediate family, let's say you help your immediate family, so then you give to the community. Your community comes first. Your immediate community where you live. Whether it's the needy bride, whether it's all kinds of things, right? That comes first. After that, then there are different, sort of a, let's say a hierarchy of who I should help. I help orphans, do I help, schools, do I help this? Yeah, charity's a good thing. So, question how far charity goes. But where does charity start? It starts at home. It starts with the community. Then you go outside the community, right? But again, if I, even if I go outside the community, who's to say I go outside the Jewish people? Now, again, someone's going to hear me and say, that's discrimination. That's not discrimination. Every nation, who are they going to help first? Every single nation. Take America, you take Canada, you take England, take all these countries. Who comes first? Their own country. You going to call that selfish? They're looking out for their own. Now, there are some people that get into power. What do? They go to, their main policy is about what goes on outside of their own country. And then their own country goes to pot because they're too interested in foreign affairs. But, this is a normal thing. This is a rational thing. It's not something where you say, oh, that's racist, that's discriminatory. Why am I going to, it doesn't mean a person necessarily shouldn't help. You see, America helps a lot of countries. They have difficulties, Let's say there's a huge earthquake, tens of thousands of people killed. Yeah, they'll send people this, that. I get it. They'll allocate money. But again, those are extenuating circumstances. In general, if those things wouldn't happen, where's that money? Should it go? Most of it should go to home. Should go to what's going on in their own place. You're going to say that's discrimination? Who says they have to help the world? Who says? Someone's going to say, come on, Jewish people are different. Jewish people are different because we're a light into nations. You're a light into nations. You're right. What does a light into nation have to do with anything over here? What does it have to do with the rest of the world? Zero. Doesn't say that. Right? Now, someone here points out, you get an obligation, 10 commandments, honor your father and your mother. You're right. Doesn't say honor the world. Right? I don't have an obligation to honor the world. If I can help, it's one thing. But again, this is not, what we're looking at is everybody looks out for their own. Everybody. So why should that be a knock against the Jewish people? You should be doing more for us. Now, I would agree, and others may disagree, I would agree that there's a significant need, tremendous significant need to help converts. Tremendous need. Help them integrate into communities. Help them, marry off kids. They don't have families going to help them. Let's say, many things they need help with. Right? Some people will say, yeah, it's a nice thing. That's a nice idea. But you know what? There are 13 million Jews who don't know anything about Judaism. We're going to help them first. Right? They got this question last week. What? When it says converts, and a lot of times in the Torah it says, mention a convert, but aren't they full-class citizens? Like Jews? Aren't they Jews? Yeah, they are Jews. 100%. There are certain limitations, certain things that, they may not be able to do that, Jews can do because, blemish on their soul, even when they convert, whatever. There are certain things without going into everything. That's true. But what are people going to say? And I've heard this, a number of times. That's a great thing. But look at all these other Jews. Look at all these other Jews. Don't know Aleph Beis. They don't know Shema Yisrael. More of a mitzvah to help them than non-Jews. Doesn't it say you have to love the non-Jew? You got to help them. Right? It says you have to love the convert. But before they convert, don't they deserve to be helped? Think they deserve to be helped? They need to be helped after conversion. Certainly well after conversion. In many ways, people make the mistake and think conversion is, the hardest thing. It's not the hardest thing. It's after. Right? That's when they need the most help. It's about integration. So there are many things, okay? Right? I'm one person trying to do a million different things. Trying to do a lot of different things here. But at the same time, they should be, they should be nurtured. They should be helped. 100% they should be. Now the question is, how far does it go? Right? How far does it go? A non-Jew, let's say, can't relocate to a Jewish community. So a rabbinical court is not going to look at them until they move. All right, they may try and help them, speak to them, but in general, they're not going to do that much because they have to be within walking distance of the synagogue. Now that makes sense. that makes sense. Now the question is, how far should we, the Jewish people, go to help that? That's the question, right? How far that goes. So there are a heck of a lot more non-Jews out there than Jews. A billion times more. Even though, Jews got a lot of money, plenty of Jewish money out there. Here's the question of getting it for the right things, right? I don't think there's any question. But, a person has to realize, and again, this is clear cut, as someone here points out, that, everyone's got their own land. Everyone's got their language, right? So who are they going to look out for? Who are they going to look out for? Their own. They're not looking out to help the world. They're not that altruistic. Push comes to shove, they have a certain amount of money. Who's it going to? Themselves. It's not going out of the country. Right? That's what's happening. This is not, we shouldn't be held to such a pedestal. Like, we got to help the whole world because we're the chosen people. We have to do what we need to do. Right? And we do help others. But again, the burden, a person has to show they can help themselves. Now, there are organizations, let's say for someone who comes from, Sephardic, let's say they are from Spanish descent, right, so to speak. Let's say they are from Spanish descent, but they are not, they're Moranos, let's say, or what a better word, they're from the Bnei Anusim. They didn't convert. They didn't convert to Catholicism, or maybe they faked it or whatever, and they were really Jewish, right? In the end, they were really Jewish. Now, that being the case, right? That being the case, there are groups out there, that are helping, people like this. They made a whole thing about trying to help them and relocate and all that. So that's a tremendous thing. Is that the majority? Certainly not. Right? Certainly not. But again, that should not be a knock. That shouldn't be a knock on us. Our goal is, we're going to help our own first. That's not discriminatory. Every nation's going to do that. And it's not just us. So to speak. But there is, I would say, maybe there is a little bit of a fine line. Maybe there is, where maybe, we should take an initiative and help maybe more. But again, and, I'll get in trouble for this, but we're not looking for people to sponge off of us. One of the things the base in a rabbinical court wants to see is that a Jew is self-sufficient in their community. When a person comes in, and they convert, they want to see they're self-sufficient. They don't want to see they're going to be an extra burden to the Jewish community. Now, if a person, moves in and all that and everything's good, and then they hit hard times, it's one thing. But again, who is saying that's my obligation? My obligation is to bring them in. There's no obligation to convert people. If they come in and they're serious and they show they're the real deal, that's one thing. Right? Totally one thing. But other than that, my obligation is to go that far. Again, I've been cursed for this. Number of people that you owe us, you go into base and you're doing what they tell you. You're doing exactly what they tell you. No more, no less. Right? You're not dictating over here. And again, I can't even tell you how many people, have said such a thing. That, I'm going to convert, they're going to do this for me, they're going to do that for me. You're not coming in with conditions. There are no preconditions. Whatever the rabbis tell you to do, that's what you have to do. Why do I have to listen to them? Because the Torah tells me. Every generation, I have to listen to what the rabbis say. I have to listen to the Kohanim, the Levites, Whatever they tell you, right is left, left is right, you have to listen. That's your absolute obligation. So again, this process is not for everybody. I'm not saying it's for everybody. At the same time, the burden shouldn't necessarily be on us. Shouldn't be on us. Right? Definitely shouldn't be on us. A person wants to give, 10% what they make and they want to help this, that, and the other thing. Okay. 100%. It's a good thing. If they're giving to proper charities and, different things. So that's what they should do. But, a person shouldn't think beyond the shadow of a doubt they're getting a free lunch here. And everything's coming to them. It's not true. Definitely not true. You say, well, it's not my fault I wasn't born Jewish. You're right. No one says it was. But now there's a reality. And there are certain things a person has to do. And if you don't meet the criteria, okay, I spoke about this on Thursday. In my Q&A, mentioned all this. That, someone coming in, okay, you're not coming in with preconditions. Or any condition. Right? Certain things you have to do. But it should be made easier. So what should we do? What should we take out? Which mitzvah should we take out? The more you water it down, it's never going to be kept. That we see from the Reform movement, that we see from the Conservative movement. Never going to be kept. Right? So we need to do what we need to do. And you want to meet that criteria, great. You can't meet that criteria, okay. There is empathy here. I'm not saying not. And there are people, let's say, limited income, and they can't move. Not everyone says you have to be Jewish. It's a tremendous responsibility as well, without even getting into that. But if a person can't do it, they can't do it. But you have to meet a certain criteria. Other religions may be a lot easier. Okay. We're not telling you to be part of these religions, but that doesn't matter. The criteria is what it is. Right? And it might be a little bit different standard in, certain places, but, there are certain basic things you have to do. And one of them, obviously, is moving to a community. Living within walking distance. That's obvious. You can't live in your own island. And for some people, that's a huge obstacle. I understand. Family might be a huge obstacle. There are a number of things. There are a number of things, okay? But see, that's all part of the test also. Just like someone who goes to medical school. First year, 30% going to get knocked out. Next year, another 15, 20%. Because they want to see who's going to stick. So here, by conversion also, anyone, even someone who's accepted by a rabbinical court, 20% actually finish. Because a lot of issues. The evil inclination doesn't stop over here. It moves. Makes it very, very hard. It's part of the test. I mean, everything we do essentially is a test, but it's part of the test. 100% is part of the test. So, it's not supposed to be easy. Do I say it's supposed to be impossible? No. I wouldn't say it has to be impossible, but, as we say, anything that comes easy, probably not worthwhile. So, on that sense, you got to be, you got to see what it is. You got to see reality for what it is, right? That's reality over here. Someone asks, is true Orthodox Jews have a divorce rate about 10%? I'd say it's probably less, but it could be. It is on the rise. I don't think there's a question about that, unfortunately. That definitely is, on the rise for a lot of different reasons. Really, not something that I want to go into now, but there are potentially a number of reasons. A number of reasons why that is. And yeah, it's, some people will say, I've heard Jews say this, it's not in vogue to get, it's not in vogue to get divorced. Well, it's on the books. Torah says clear. You don't get along, different things, you get divorced. I mean, obviously it's something you have to work at, and if there's no way, no way to fix it. So, okay, divorce is on the books. Talmud says God sheds tears, whatever that means, when someone gets divorced. He doesn't want people to get divorced. Doesn't mean he can't. In Christianity, it's a different issue. Totally different issue. Right? Totally different issue. So, it's a problem. Another thing I've seen recently is that you can have people married, 30, 40 years getting divorced. Now, it could be their marriage was bad anyway. Once the kids finally got married, they got divorced or whatever. But that's tragic. I think it's even more tragic, than people, get married, get divorced after a year, a few months or whatever. It is a problem, right? One of the things, someone says the land of confusion. It's more about, I guess that's part of it, or most of it. In other words, you come from a place that has skewed values, really bad values. Can that seep in? Yeah. Has, bad values seeped in the Jewish community? Sure. Right? We're our own worst enemy. But, a person has to know how to look at the outside world, how to filter, so to speak, the outside world. And there's a lot of temptation. Tremendous amount of temptation. There's no question. So, part of it, without going much more, part of the problem, at least from what I've read, is the fact that, people have skewed values. They don't always reveal what they are, but they have skewed values. Why they have skewed values? Because they got them from society, and it seeped in. Anti-Torah values, in a lot of different ways. So, there are other things where people build themselves up to be something that they're not. And then shortly after they're married, the spouse, feels like they got a bag of bones that they were lied to. That also happens, unfortunately. And the question is how you deal with it. Right? But there's certain things that, you can't predict. Right? Someone loses their job. They go through some trauma. People handle trauma in different things in different ways. Some people, may never get over certain things or whatever. And that can have a tremendously negative effect. There are some people who've been religious for a long time. I'm not saying this is as common, right? And they just drop it. They're married, couple kids or whatever. They just drop it. A friend of mine, it's not so well known about, not so well known about this person, but a friend of mine that, as a kid, probably mid-20s. I would say probably mid-20s, if not early 30s. Just picked up, left everything Judaism. I don't know what happened. But just left everything. Right? Totally left everything. Basically ended up getting divorced. So, some people just get burnt out. Question is how you deal with it. Some people end up going to work, some people other things. There are a number of factors there. It's not just one factor. But I will say that I think the impact of the world in general has a tremendous effect. Some people say, you got to ask your rabbi, do this and do that and do the other thing. The secular world has an unbelievable effect. And we have to be more insular. It's hard to be insular in this world, right? But in general, there's so many things we have to be careful for. It's, unfortunately, there's such bad influence, out there that, even with our own communities, we got to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. Again, there are multiple things going on, but I would say 100%, that the factor of the outside world has an effect. Definitely has an effect. I think it has a major effect, right? And obviously, who we hang out with, who we speak to, who our kids speak to, whatever, has an effect. And one little thing can erase, one bad thing can erase like years of good work. Can just like flush it. Can really flush it, unfortunately. Because then when a person's caught up in whatever that is, it's very hard to fight. Very hard to fight, not to mention people have learning disabilities, they don't fit into schools, whatever. There are a lot of, there are a lot of different factors. A lot of different factors. And even though the majority of education should really come in the house, come from the home, at the same time, it's just the outside world. It's just you're fighting an uphill battle. So kids have to get the right instruction and know what's out there, how they're supposed to view it, and all that, and fit it into their lives. The workplace got issues, many, many things. Many, many things. Like my Rebbe would say, as a Jew, you speak to a non-religious Jew, right? You speak to a secular Jew. That in itself can have a negative effect. Totally negative effect. What they say, what they speak about, all kinds of things. What are you going to say? I'm never going to speak to a secular Jew. It doesn't necessarily work that way, right? We live in this world. You got to live in this world. But he's telling you got to be careful. You got to be careful who we speak to, who we hang out with, who's around us. That's protecting ourselves. The worst thing that happened to Jewish people, Napoleon and others opened up the ghettos. That was the worst thing that happened. Because what happened when the ghettos were open? We intermarried. We assimilated. So even, compared to the rest of the world, even if you say, and again, I'm not necessarily doubting these stats, they may be true, right? Let's say there's a 10% divorce rate in the Orthodox community. What is it in the secular world? 50%? 60%? It's 6 times higher. How many people get married and divorced more than once? The institution of marriage is in a bad state. Tremendously bad state right now. It's better just to stay, to live together. Why get married? Right? For Noahide, that's fine. That's considered marriage according to the Rambam. They walk out, that's considered divorce. They don't have to get married. But the institution of marriage is a disaster right now in the secular world. In the religious world, most of the time it works. Very high percentage. Even if you tell me it's 10%. I had someone tell me this many years ago. Oh, but in the Orthodox community, divorce is rising. Is it even, now we're going to say, let's say it's 10%. Is it 70%? No. There's a 5 times greater chance of a secular person getting divorced than an Orthodox Jew. Because even if there are problems, you're going to try and work it out. And if you can't work it out, okay. Right? In the secular world, how many people work things out, this, that, thing. People get divorced like there's no tomorrow. That institution of marriage is a disaster. But again, so someone will take these statistics and say, see, the Orthodox community Jewish rate, the divorce rate is rising. But it's still 5 times less than in the secular world, so we're doing something right. I'm not saying it's not on the rise. I'm not saying that. But if there's a 5, 6, 7 times greater chance of getting divorced in the secular world, what does that say? It says we're doing something right. That's what it says. But I had someone say, see, it's on the rise. So you see what you want to see. You hear what you want to hear. Right? But I would say we're doing something right over here. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Definitely doesn't mean that. There are a lot of issues going on. There's a tremendous amount of stress. No question. Living an Orthodox life is not easy. You have a lot of kids, a lot of expenses, especially outside of Israel, and tuition and this and that. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of peer pressure even within the community. Keeping up with others and different things. A lot of pressure, in general. So it doesn't make it easy. And you're being torn in 20 different directions. You got to find time to learn. Then you got, let's say you got a wedding, you got an engagement, you got this, you got a balance. Life is a balance, right? But when you're looking at the world, okay, I need to maximize my potential. I need to work hard. We're being torn in a million different directions. Not only that, the outside influence is so strong and is so much saturated. It's hard. It's hard to fight that off also. You live in a consumer society. Billboards, let's say, hopefully they're modest billboards. Person listens to the radio. It's all about buying things, selling things you need, you don't need. You're saturated. You're saturated. All kinds of ads, all kinds of things. These, a person has to concentrate and do what they need to do and stay away from all this stuff. Now, again, someone would say, I know how to filter. I know how to work this out. But you know what? It's, a person has, I always say, I go to my Rebbe synagogue to learn, a number of times a week. It's like, that's my city of refuge. That's what the city of refuge is, a place to go to learn, a place to hear classes, whatever it is, that gives me the equilibrium in order to be able to live in this world. The Christians say this world is bad. Everything's bad. So we say we made a mess of it, but we have to sanctify. We have to sanctify the physical. And that's a heck of a lot more difficult. Anyone can be religious and super religious on Yom Kippur. You don't eat, right? You don't eat, you don't drink. You're in synagogue most of the day. You feel like a piece of dirt. It's all about atonement, all these good things, right? So, okay, that's one day a year. So what about the other days of the year? I have to sanctify the physical. Take Purim, just the opposite of Yom Kippur. See, Yom Kippur, a day like Purim, Yom Kippurim, right? A day like Purim, a day like Yom Kippur. Why? How do you equate Yom Kippur and Purim? Two opposite ends of the spectrum. Yom Kippur, I feel like a piece of dirt. I'm fasting all day long. So who says I can't act like an angel? Oh, what about Yom Kippur? What about Purim? What does Purim do? Purim, I'm drinking, and I'm drinking some more, and I'm eating, and all these festivities, and that can be even a higher day than Yom Kippur. That can be even a greater day than Yom Kippur. You know why? Because I'm doing something that's a lot more difficult. I'm sanctifying the physical. That's a heck of a lot more difficult. The Christians say you can't do that, right? Totally can't do that. You're not going to sanctify the physical. It's all bad. What do you mean it's all bad? I can take an apple, and I can make a blessing on it, and bring all the shefa, all the spirituality from God, bring it down to the world to help grow apple trees and this and that, and I take a bite and I eat that apple. But what does eating that apple do? Right? I'm hungry, so it satisfies a hunger pain. But I can sanctify the physical. I make a blessing. I say God's king of the world. I acknowledge his kingship, and I eat an apple. Yeah, it's a physical act, but it's also a spiritual act. Right? So that should have an effect. That should have an effect on a person. Right? You take a drink, you eat something, whatever, a split second before, think about what you're doing. I am now saying God runs the world. God is in charge. Etc. And I'm thanking him for this beautiful apple. I just read a story of Victor Miller, of blessed memory. Right? He looked at an apple and said, wow, what a beautiful thing. Look at this apple and this apple seed. It grows, a tree of hundreds of apples. And he looks at the apple and he says, this apple was put on this tree. It grew on this tree. And people picked it and they put it in this store. And this apple came to, Miller's table. Came to Miller's table, this apple unique from me. Most people look at an apple that way? No. Right? But he's telling you that's the way to look at the world. Right? You have a piece of cake, you have this, you have other things. God's the one in charge. He's the one running things. How thankful I have to be. Right? But what's the problem? We get caught up in life, as we always say. Right? But when we look at these things, what does it do? It gives us appreciation. Right? So when a person makes that blessing and God's king of the world, forget about everything else. Everything else doesn't matter. Everything else is just a distraction. But here I'm taking this apple and I'm sanctifying it. That's how I get on this. How am I sanctifying it? Because I call out God's name. I say he's the one in charge. He's the one that runs the world. He's the one that gives me sustenance. Unbelievable. That's what I have to think. And forget about all this other stuff. All the other stuff doesn't matter, but I have to keep it in perspective. Right? I absolutely have to keep it in perspective. And that's not, in this world, it's not an easy thing to do. And the reason it's not an easy thing to do is because we're oversaturated with so many things. Now, I'll go on record because, we are recording this, and at some point it's going to go on the Roku network, right? We're going to go on the Roku network here, right? So what are we going to say? We're going to say, listen, these things I have to take stock of. These things I have to think about. I have to forget about what's going on in the outside world. No, it doesn't matter. Like a friend of mine would say, if there's a war going on, I'll find out about it. Okay. But I have to focus on what I need to do, right? I totally have to focus on, what my obligation is. I have to guard my life, to guard my body, right? Take care of my body. Many things we have an obligation to do, but, person sees, whatever, you got cookies in the house, okay, you can't just eat one, eat two, eat three, whatever. And then you feel like, oh, I can't believe I ate all of this. We have to be in control. This week's Parsha, which we just read, which everyone outside of Israel is going to be a week behind for like the next 14 weeks or so. But the beginning of the Parsha, chapter 19, the book of Leviticus, says that God is holy, so you have to be holy. So what does that mean? The difference of opinion between Rashi and the Ramban. Rashi says you got to stay away from forbidden relationships. The Ramban says you got to stay away from things that are permissible, lest you abuse them. Meaning, you're allowed to eat 100%, right? You're allowed to eat, but you got to make sure you don't become a glutton. You're allowed to drink. You make kiddush on wine or whatever. Who says you're allowed to be an alcoholic? So you got to learn control. You got to have control. And if you don't, if you lose control, it's not what God wants. You're going to say, what about desire? How do I control desire? So it's hard. Right? It's definitely hard. There's no question. There's no question that a person has to learn to control themselves. Right? So we mentioned earlier about this idea of kol isha. Right? About a guy listening to a woman sing applies to Jews, not to non-Jews. Right? But be that as it may, and you're gonna, and I pointed out, I brought this thing about, we mentioned about, a guy's urge, etc. He's got to be in control. He 100% has to be in control. So, does he have what to work on? Sure. Got a lot to work on. It's other woman's fault over here. She can sing as much as she wants. What's the problem? She can't sing in front of men. Right? So, there's a reality. The reality is, me as a guy, and women also, they have to control what they see. They have to be careful what they see. Careful what's out there in the street. Because that has an effect. And I guarantee a person who saw something 20 years ago, it's still in their mind. It's there. The only question is, how does it manifest itself? When does it come out? It might not come out for a long time, but it's there. We don't forget. Our soul records everything. So therefore, we got to be careful. We for sure have to be careful. And, what we see has an effect. What we hear has an effect, right? And we mentioned this before. Many times before, a person will say, okay, I just listened to the news. What's the problem with being informed? So, we all know that there are about 36 transgressions every time a person hears Lashon Hara or speaks Lashon Hara. You're not allowed to hear it, you're not allowed to speak it. Now, without going into all the details, think about it. You listen to the news. Most of the news is all Lashon Hara. So you're going to say, so what's the big deal? So, as I listen to the news, I get informed. Or people will say, watching cartoons, what's the problem? Violence! Teaching violence might be funny, might be enjoyable, right? Getting bad values. A lot of bad values from it. Not to mention it's a waste of time and other things, right? So there are things that are out there, that make us think certain things, and that we have to be in control, and we have to be careful. Now, there are times somebody might see something. Somebody might see something. It's not their fault. Right? So, whatever. They're outside, whatever, boom. They see something that's, they weren't in control here. It's out of their control. Now, if it's out of their control and they get it out of their mind very quickly, okay, it's not a problem. But if they think about it and they think about it and they think about it and this and that, that's a different issue. right? A lot of, a lot of things that we see potentially are not necessarily in our control. There is a lot that is. But even if it's not in our control, the question is how we deal with it, right? So something happened, you saw something, you didn't expect to see, whatever the case is, and you get it out of your mind. You don't concentrate on it, you don't think about it, very good. You didn't transgress. But if a person saw something, and then they look again, they look a third time, their mind, goes a little bit crazy, that's forbidden. You're going to say, well, it's not their fault. Well, whose fault is it? Who says you start thinking about those things? See if you fight like a dog to get it out of your mind, good. That's not transgression. Because that you weren't in control. In this case, now, even if you don't act on it, but you think about it, that's a problem. So we have to be in control at all times. We have to learn to control desires and this and that. That's what we have to do. So even if a person says, well, even if you're telling me that that's not fair, it's not a question of what fair is or not. That's not the question. A guy has a certain drive that women don't, right? A greater drive, let's say. That's true. Biology, we're not going to disagree over here, right? Let's say that's true. Now, if that's true, it's not a question, we're suppressing women. It has nothing to do with suppressing women. There's a reality. So if there's a reality, we have to learn to control it. That's something, we have to harness. And we have to work hard at. Now, it might not be easy. It's not going to be easy. But it's something a guy has an obligation to do. When we say the Shema, we say you're not allowed to go after your heart, after your eyes. That applies to men and to women. Doesn't just apply to men. Right? But for a guy, he has to be more careful. So based on that, we all have what to work on. Right? So a person thought something, worked very hard to get rid of it. That's not transgression. When a person thinks and this, even if nothing else happens, still forbidden. Because you did it to yourself. 100% you did it to yourself. But the person walked in front of you, or an image came up you didn't expect. Okay. Now the question is, how do I view it? No pun intended. How do I deal with it? These are real things. So a person has to be very careful. Very, very careful. We have to be careful what we think. I mentioned last week, my class in the book of Leviticus. The Kli Yakar brings down one of the great commentaries on the Torah, and he says a person gets punished for his thoughts about idolatry. It says explicitly. Even if you don't act on it, the person thinks it. That's enough. So you see, person got to be careful. Got to be careful what you think. Got to be very, very careful. Some things, as we said, is not necessarily in your control, but there are a lot that is. 100% there's a lot that is. So if that's true, I got to learn to control my thoughts. I got to learn to control what I see. Right? It's a constant battle. The evil inclination comes day in and day out, testing you this way, testing you that way. And even if we fail, we got to work hard to fight it. Just because you fail today, maybe you fail tomorrow. Who says you're going to fail the next day? You got to put up barrier after barrier after barrier. You're going to say, but, it's so hard. It's this. It doesn't matter. You want to make sure you don't stumble. And, today it's very easy. Every generation has their own thing. Has their own evil inclination. Right? In the early 1900s, all about all kinds of isms. Communism, socialism, democracy. Destroyed tens of thousands of Jews. Millions. Not to mention physical brutality against Jews. Forget about that. I'm talking about philosophical things or whatever. You don't make boundaries. What happens? It's exactly what happens. So all the more so, in the workplace and different things. We have to make boundaries. And if you don't make boundaries, you'll fail. Not saying 100%, but you gotta be careful. You really gotta be careful. Now for non-Jews, in general, they also have to be careful. They may not have the same level of obligation as the Jew does, but they still have to be careful. Right? When I say going after their eyes is forbidden, no. Maybe it's a moral imperative, I would say that. For non-Jews. But not as an absolute obligation like a Jew. And there might be many things like that. There's different levels. Right? But even so, even if they don't apply to a non-Jew, right? Even if they don't apply to a non-Jew, wouldn't I say it's a good thing to do? As a moral imperative? For sure. Our evil inclination doesn't stop. Never stops. So we got to work day in and day out to control it, to get rid of it. Making boundaries. Some people say it's fanaticism 101. Oh, you make boundaries in this and boundaries on that. You're square. Why torture yourself? People may ask, why torture yourself? It's not torture. It's because these things are bad. They're bad for me. They're bad for my psyche. So if they're bad for my psyche, why shouldn't I fight them? As I mentioned last week, my class on duties of the heart. What does the evil inclination do? He stands, he walks, and something else. I forget what the third language is over there. Right? But in the end, it owns you. First, it comes sort of from the outside. Then once it makes a little bit of a hole, then it sort of festers. Then it goes, and then something else. I forget the last terminology. So what happens? Then it owns you. Then it's like the owner. You got to fight the owner over here. You don't want to make him the owner. But the evil inclination doesn't come in and say, okay, Yosef Cohen over here, Mr. Jew, I want you to desecrate Shabbos. So Yosef Cohen says no such thing. I'm not going to desecrate Shabbos. Not interested in desecrating Shabbos. So the evil inclination says, okay, no problem. I got time. But he puts that idea there. So then over time, what happens is resolve gets weaker in different ways. He reads things maybe he shouldn't read, and one thing leads to another, and then eventually, let's say, he desecrates Shabbos or does idolatry. It doesn't happen overnight. But see, it's a very slippery slope. You let it in a little bit, even a dropping, I say, this is not going to affect me. I'm not going to let this affect me. I'm not going to have a negative effect. Okay, I want to listen to non-Jewish music. Give this as an example. I want to listen to non-Jewish music. So you're going to say, oh, not so bad. You're not listening to, to punk rock or, whatever. You listen to music. It's non-Jewish music. You're going to say, oh, it's not going to have a negative effect. Okay. Down the line, it doesn't stop there. Maybe then you start watching, music videos. Maybe it leads to that. Maybe it leads further than that. I know someone, whatever, they allow them to listen to music, this kid to listen to music. And what do you get hooked on? As a teenager, what do you get hooked on? So, now I'm gonna forget I'm gonna forget what it was. Whatever, it was some whatever. It was like talk radio. So Howard Stern, that's what I was thinking. Now, you might say he's worse than maybe others, maybe for sure. Right? But that's sort of where it started. And that's where it ended. And it went downhill from there. So you're gonna say, well, no one's gonna, not gonna start listening, to radio, whatever. Who says they're gonna start with that? Okay. Right? But this is pretty, maybe it didn't start there, but it went there pretty quick. And once the person got involved in that, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. So, parenting today is very hard. I don't think there's any question. Right? Every generation has it hard in different ways. Whatever the evil inclination is. So you have to have a balance. There has to be some sort of balance, right? There have to be boundaries, right? Someone points out, for sure you need boundaries. But parenting is not an easy thing today. And much harder to be insular. Much harder. But people do it in a better way. Some people know. Some people say, let them be exposed to everything. Why? Like when I was in camp, someone said, you got to do everything once. I said, no, I don't. I said, if I know, I got an idea. I said, I'll show you. He said, go outside the bunk, take 50 steps back, run as fast as you can into the wall. I'm not going to do that. But you got to try everything once. I knew what they meant. Or if I know it's bad, why do I have to do it? You got to set boundaries. True. But the kids experiment. They want to test the parent also. So, I know someone, their kid said, they tested the boundaries and they found out things at a much younger age than they should have, and they regret it. Well, very good. At least they admit it now. Curiosity killed the cat over here. So, kids will find things if they want to find them. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. And, we need a lot of heavenly help here. The Talmud says, we mentioned many times, you want to go on the right path, God will help you. You want to go on the wrong path, God will not stop you. Right? So, a person can test the waters and get burnt, seriously burnt. And, seen people do it. And, you can warn, you can this, you can that. The person wants to find it, they'll find it. And then it can spiral out of control or you nip in the bud. Or just, the evil inclination overcomes it. Temptation overcomes it. Right? You say, well, this is forbidden. What's the first thing they want to do is look at what's forbidden. Okay. And someone say, wow, the whole world out there I didn't know about. I mean, not everyone is so sheltered today. But I'm saying that, yeah, there is a whole world that people have no idea how to navigate without Torah. They have zero idea how to navigate. And they abuse everything in the book. And today it's just absolutely nuts. I grew up in Boston way back when. So now I just saw recently that they want to approve, teaching about same sex for second grade. Already by second grade. That's insanity. You can call me square. You can say I live in Victorian England. You can say our values are backwards and this and that. Why in the world are you going to teach someone in second grade? 7, 8 years old? You're going to teach someone in second grade. About same sex. That's absurd. That is literally absurd. Not to mention immoral other things. That's the world we live in. We live in a world, men dressing like women. We're going to keep this clean. Breaking all the world records in sports because they're men playing women's sports. I mean, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. What's the only thing we have to hold on to? It's Torah. That's the guide. It's like being on a sailboat, right? No motor. What happens if you're on a sailboat, you're guided by the wind? You throw your rudder overboard. Guess what? You go around in circles. You're going around in circles. You need that anchor. What's that anchor? Torah. Torah's the anchor. You don't have Torah as an anchor, anything goes. Moral values go out the window. Right? Someone here points out, public schools are imposing graphic sex education from 3rd grade. That's nuts. I can understand 8th grade maybe. Okay, you got to teach them about it, whatever. 3rd grade? 8 years old? I mean, that's insanity. That is insanity. Again, people can say anything they want, about Orthodox Jews and whatever. That's insane. Who wants their kid to hear that in 3rd grade? Oh, I think that's great. I think that's great. I want my kid to be, super educated. Third grade, they don't know nothing from nothing. They're lucky if by their 15 they know something. By third grade, for sure not. And you're going to, something as powerful as that, you're going to start teaching them at that level. Yeah, very sad. It's a very sad reality. And then, the kid comes up, transgender, who knows what, and they say, well, how'd this happen? They say, how'd this happen? What do you mean, how'd it happen? You let it happen. It's whatever, without getting into all that. So the point is that, what we see go on in the world, we have to get these ideas out of our head. Our head should be filled with what? Torah. Or as Winnie the Pooh would say, fluff, not fluff. Torah. Got to be filled with Torah. And the parents don't know what to do over here. So that's the only thing we can do. We can, a little bit of Torah, a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. Pushes away a lot of darkness. And that's what we have to focus on. That's the only way to fight what's going on in the world. There's no other solution. Torah has to be the anchor. And a person has to be steeped in Torah, Jew or non-Jew. That's the only way you're going to survive. In this moral, degenerate world. That's the only way. People would say, no, it's about control. It's about, it's about the fact that I can filter what I see. I have that ability. But guess what? We're doing a pretty bad job of it. Because you know what they say, you leave your mind open till your brains fall on the floor. How much do we have to do that before God forbid what the end result is? It's tragic. But there's an antidote. God, the Talmud says that God created the Torah as the antidote. God created the evil inclination, created the Torah as an antidote, but there's one caveat. And that is without God's help, you can't overcome the evil inclination. That's mind-boggling. Even with Torah, I need God's help. I need to pray every day. God, help me overcome the evil inclination. That's what I got to do. That's what works. But we live in this messed up world that we messed up. So that's the only anchor. Before the Messiah comes, it's going to go haywire. Absolutely haywire. Which we already see. So the only way to stay anchored in a total degenerate world is to be attached to Torah. Right? To be attached to proper Torah scholars. To learn under people who give the right message. That's what we have to do. And if we think we're going to do it on our own, think again. Think again. You can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. That's why they always say you got to live inspired. Living inspired is not easy. It's not easy. But what's the alternative? What else do we have? We don't have anything else. We have nothing else. The mind has, as someone here points out, the mind has to be filled with Torah. That's what it has to be filled with. When I'm thinking about, when I'm learning, questions, and to be inspired. That's what we have to do. Is it easy in this messed up world? No. Because we have a lot of things pulling us in different directions. Which we've already said. But if a person, how can a person sin? So the Gemara says, person can sin when nichnas bo ruach shtus, when enters a foolish thought. How can it be that there's going to be entered in the person a foolish thought when the mind is free from Torah? If a person's mind is free from Torah, anything can enter. Says, hey, if I can't focus, I need downtime, not always learning Torah. You're still going to be thinking in Torah no matter what you do. That's also not an easy thing. But we have to be focused. We have to be grounded. If you're not grounded, your mind goes, a million different directions. Million different directions. Because once, especially in the States, right now. What's everyone talking about? Baseball, right? Basketball playoffs, NHL, right? All these great things. Totally wasting their time. Totally wasting their time. It might be fun, might be interesting, but so what? Team wins, they lose. We get caught up. We get caught up in the everyday. How are we not going to get caught up in the everyday? Just, shut everything off. Shut everything off. Focus on what I should focus on. What's my main focus? Torah. That's my main focus. Right? So women, okay, they also should focus on Torah. They got other things they need to do also. Fine. They should also be listening to classes. All should be living inspired. Right? 100%. Can't be just the husbands doing everything. It's not enough. Right? She also has to be inspired. She doesn't have to learn as much as the guy does. She's not going to have time. Right? Busy raising a family. Okay. But she's got to be imbued, imbibed with Torah. No question. She can easily fall also. She also has to have boundaries out there. Being in the world. That's for sure. So, everybody has to be careful. Non-Jews as well. There's certainly immorality. Non-Jews have an obligation not to be immoral. Right? One of the 7 Noahide laws is immorality. So they also have to be careful. But see, again, there are a lot of things by non-Jews. I spoke about this on Tanakh Talk about moral imperatives. There are a lot of things by non-Jews that are moral imperatives that they should keep. Doesn't mean a non-Jew is, obligating the laws of Lashon Hara. No. But is it a terrible thing to speak Lashon Hara? Yeah. Is it bad for their soul? It can have an effect. It can certainly have an effect. And even if it's permissible, who says it's a good thing? So you're going to say, but I'm not obligated and I can speak about whoever I want. Maybe. Maybe that's true. Ask yourself the question, does that make you a better person? Right? Speaking Lashon Hara, what does it do? I have nothing in my hand. All I do is how to make myself look better. I destroy someone else. And if I destroy someone else, maybe that's not forbidden by what I said. Maybe not by a non-Jew. Okay, but who says it's good for the soul? Just because it's not, might not be forbidden doesn't mean it's good. There are a lot of other things. Maybe a non-Jew doesn't have a prohibition of cursing. Maybe. And even if that would be the case, that they don't, but who says it's a good thing to do? Who says it's a good thing? Right? So there are a lot of things that apply to non-Jews that I would say are moral imperatives. 100% moral imperatives. That they should stay away from. They have an obligation to be careful what they see. Guard their eyes. No. As long as it doesn't lead to immorality. Should they be careful? They should. Right? Because they want to exemplify, their spiritual soul. They want their spiritual soul to grow. They don't want to just be an animal. We all have animalistic tendencies. So we have to beat them down. We have to control them. Just because certain things are permissible doesn't mean I should do it all the time. Doesn't mean I should be thinking about it all the time. Right? So, let's say by a Jew, his wife's permitted to him. Very good. Who says it's supposed to be with her every second? Not to mention it weakens a person, whatever. We'll keep this clean. We're going to go on the Rogo network and only get shut down. Right? But who says a person should be with his wife every second? She's permissible. Again, you got to be holy also. Right? We mentioned that. Leviticus chapter 19. Beginning of Leviticus chapter 19. You got to be holy. Being holy means I'm in control. Even things that are permissible. Right? Even things that are permissible. There's limitation. There's limitation over here. So I have to be careful. I don't think there's any question. But you're going to say, isn't it permissible? Again, we're not saying not. We're just saying you got to learn how to control. And that's what life is. That's what life is. Right? So someone says, man, man's got these urges, whatever. They have to be in control. It's not a woman's fault. I didn't say it's a woman's fault. A woman wants to sing, let her sing as much as she wants, right? Etc. She shouldn't sing in front of Jewish men. Right? She wants to sing. No one says she can't sing. But it's a guy's fault. He's got to control. You're right. It's a guy's fault. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change the law. Totally doesn't change the law. So we're our own worst enemy. Okay. So a Jewish woman, be limited over here. Who she can sing in front of. Fine. Right? But that's protecting the guy also, not to say, I can't do this. I want to sing in front of whoever I want. Who gives you the right? It's not about what you want. You're also protecting other people. Right? You're also protecting men from transgressing. Because a woman can be over Torah prohibition of what? Putting a stumbling block in front of someone. A Jewish woman doesn't apply to a non-Jew. This whole thing doesn't apply to a non-Jew. But in general, men have an issue, okay? So there are certain ramifications. You can't suppress women. Suppressing women would say they can never sing, ever. That's what it means. That's suppression. Did we say they can't sing? No. Sing as much as they want. Just do it in front of Jewish men. Oh, you're suppressing me. Okay, you want to call that suppression? Call it suppression. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you have to, you have a right. You just have to do it right over here. You want to have, women's groups and this and that. Beautiful. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Singing in front of Jewish men, that's a problem. Right? But women are not going to want to hear that. Because I want to do what I want to do. Well, it's not about what you want to do. So then the question is the Torah true or not? That's what we always come back to. Did God give the Torah or didn't give the Torah? And if he did, what's my obligation? Oh, this man made up this. Again, God gave the Torah, also gave oral law. Got to listen to the rabbis. Mentioned that before. So it's not suppression over here. You're right. It's a little more limiting. Okay? So what do you do? A woman who's a singer. Woman's a singer. Jewish woman. Beautiful voice. Does concerts. Gonna be Jewish men there. Got a problem. Well, the whole problem being in public, that's a whole other issue. But forget that. Forget that. Singing in front of Jewish men. Putting a stumbling block in front of them. Forbidden. Jewish men shouldn't be there. You're right. If they're secular, they shouldn't be there. 100%. But they're there. But they're going to be there. If it be a whole crowd of non-Jews, very good. That wouldn't necessarily be an issue. It'd be a modesty issue, but it wouldn't be a singing issue. Per se. Right? So in that sense, what happens? She's got to change. She becomes religious. She's got a problem here. She can't do that anymore. She's got to find another outlet. And there are people that beautiful, that beautiful voices, they've done their own albums for women. But that, that's going to have to be given up. Suppression of women. All right, call it what you want. You call it 100% what you want, but that's forbidden. That we hold is forbidden. So it can't be done. Now, can that be traumatic for someone? Yeah, it can. 100%. So, they'll have to do something else. I'm not going to say it's easy. If that's what they're good at, whatever, so they just channel it in a positive way. But see, make no mistake, Torah is about what? It's about what God says and what the rabbis tell us to do. That's what it's about. And I can't go to the left, I can't go to the right, they have to do what they say. Finished. That's what I have to do. And there might be times where it might be hard. It might be hard to give up certain things. I know a woman, Jewish woman, she got a lot of hair. And for her, it's very hard to cover her hair. It's very hard covering her hair. She's married. She's got no obligation to cover her hair. It's hard. Okay, we all have challenges. We all have an evil inclination. Whatever it is. So we have to work hard fighting it. We don't just say, wow, this is the way it is, and that's who I am, and that's it. That's rubbish, as the English would say. Got to fight it. Got to work hard. That's what life is. No more, no less. And people have different things they have difficulty with. Many different things. That mean, I don't have what to work on. We all have. We all have these things. But I just want to point out, there are things that, are more clear cut, less clear cut, whatever it is. And I have to do what I need to do. Even if it's hard. Even if it's very difficult. Right? The next mission will speak more about that. We'll go through that more. And explaining. Sometimes you hear something, and the rabbi will tell you to do it, and you're like, this is very hard to do. And there might be tremendous repercussions. Well, guess what? Too bad. That's what you got to do. And what are we living for? This is what we're going to end with. What are we living for? We're living to do what God wants me to do. Even if it's hard. And we say, Lefit Sar Agar, according to the amount of effort, right, that's going to be the reward. And as hard as something is, and I do it and I overcome it, the reward is unbelievable. Does that mean I come out smelling like a rose? No. Might be something very hard. You might get hit over the head. This, that, and the other thing, called names, yelled at, screamed at, who knows what. But guess what? You stick it up for Torah, you do what Torah says. That's it. You're not going to make friends here. And they're not going to listen. You're going to say, yeah, I get on and on with my parents. Yeah, and if they say that's a great Shabbos, for a Jew, I don't listen to them. Oh, but I have to honor them. This I can't do. God comes first. God absolutely comes first. Oh, they'll yell at you, they'll scream at you. What are you going to do? You 100% are going to lose. You're going to lose, okay? I mean, you don't really lose. You got to do what you need to do. That's what you got to do. And if it's hard, you're right. Last story, a friend of mine goes to a wedding. I said, oh, Mazel Tov. I said, no. My sister got married, but she married a non-Jew. So I said, how could you go there? I was there on the protest. I said, eating your kosher food on the protest, doing the horror on the protest. But what's behind it? Of course he had to go. Which you're not allowed to, but why do you have to go? Because family put a lot of pressure. Unbelievable amount of pressure. You do this, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. Couldn't stand. He couldn't handle the pressure. I mean, that's what I think. My wife had a sister got married. I was in the States, living there. We didn't go. Ooh, caused friction. Caused friction. I can tell you that till this day. But guess what? Couldn't go. Can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. Did I come out smelling like a rose? Of course not. You represent Torah. How could you go to a travesty of a mockery of Hashem? But you got hit over the head. You're right. Okay. Does that change what the Torah says? No. Did we say 20 years before, if you ever do this, we'll never come? What do you think? I was kidding? Ah, come on. Can't you find the leniency? No. There's no leniency here. There are certain things. You've been dealt with a hand. You're playing poker. All you have is single-digit numbers. Right? And none of them match. You don't have any pairs. You got nothing. So what do? You're stuck. You lose. You fold. That's what you do. You fold. So here you've been dealt a certain hand. There's no way to go left or right. You're stuck. The only question is how hard the Louisville Slugger is going to come and hit you over the head. That's the only question. So what do? You got to take the lumps. People will say, people this, people that. Okay. Is that going to change you? No. Not going to change it. It's got to be like the Rock of Gibraltar. The Rock of Gibraltar. You got to be strong as fire. Doesn't matter. Sticks and stones. But it's painful. And it's family. And it's blood. So what if it's blood? They just did the worst imaginable transgression ever. What do? They intermarry. And if I represent a Torah Jew, I'm allowed to go to a travesty of a mockery or a sham, something that you're going to get cut off for and punishment I can't even imagine what a person's going to get. And I have to go and say that's okay. Sorry, can't do it. But can't you find a way? No. There's no way to do it. There's no possible way. No possible way. You can't sugarcoat it. You cannot sugarcoat it. Now again, so what happened? Got hammered in different ways. But you know, at that point, it doesn't matter anymore. I said what I said. We did what we did. I had no choice. I got dealt a poker hand of a single digit. I'm not going to fold. I had to, in that case, you'll have to fold. In this case, we're not giving in. Can't give in. There's certain things, maybe you can find some rabbinic leniency, this, that, maybe. Maybe. In this case, you can't. So what do you do if you can't find? What do you do? Stick your head in the sand? What do you do? There's nothing you can do. I remember I had a number of questions I asked my Rebbe once. Different things, this way, that way. It's like there's nothing to do. There's no possible way. I said, okay, just checking. There's no leniency for this, maybe for that, maybe. No. Okay, that's it. There are sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes there are leniency. Sometimes there are certain things you can rely on. Whether you want to or not, doesn't matter. But sometimes that is the case. And there are other times there's just nothing to do. And in my case, many times it's all about damage control. That's all it is. How much are you going to get hammered? So over the years, some things will get me more upset. Some things, now I don't even, I don't flinch anymore. Someone makes a comment. Okay, let him talk. What am I going to do? Let him talk. There's nothing to do. Oh, but they're going to say this, they're going to say that. Yeah, it's painful. But would you rather look like a fool in God's eyes or get screamed at in this world? Right? Would you rather God scream at you or, quote unquote, a family member scream at you? I'll take the family member 100 times. God's going to scream at me for all kinds of things. Not worried about that. Right? I'd rather look like someone's going to say, come on, that's so backwards. And a man hearing a woman's voice, come on, get real. Live in the real world. I live in the real world. You don't like it. You don't like it. Okay. It can get personal. It can get testy. It can get under your skin. It can make you want to just belt somebody. Well, guess what? You got to be in control also. And you can't just say things. I understand. People are upset. You should be there. It's family. But what do you want to do? You're taking a Sefer Torah. You're taking a Torah scroll. You're throwing it on the ground. You're defecating on it. So what can I do? There's nothing to do. It's over. Right? There's nothing to do. Finished. It's damage control. Someone there points out tests never end. You're right. You're 100% right. And when a person overcomes one test, another test comes, harder. See what's going to be here. Okay. Work on your resolve other than you're 100% right. Doesn't get easier. Certain things I think do get easier, just the way we think about it, the way we deal with things. I think it's a little bit easier. But at this point, certain people will say something, it's, what do they say? It's water off a duck's back. I don't even flinch. Okay, you're going to say something, I tell people, you're going to get offended, don't even get offended what people are going to say, no matter what they say. You know why? Because they deserve to be put in a straitjacket and locked up. They are absolutely insane. Someone gave me this advice, a rabbi of mine gave me this advice years ago. These people are absolutely insane. And if someone is mentally challenged, they have a 20 IQ, and they say something, or they push you, they this, they that, whatever, you're going to take them seriously? Of course not. It's annoying, but you're not going to get upset about it. You know why? Because they're not normal. And all these other people in the world, they're not normal. You're going to say that's easy to say. You're right, it's easy to say. But you know what? It helped me a lot. I might vent about it. I might say something, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not going to get under my skin. You know why it's not going to get under my skin? Because they don't mean anything. They don't mean anything to you. I don't care if they're family. They deserve to be locked up. They're insane. And if someone insane says something, I'm not going to take it seriously at all. Right? And, I'm at a point where, I'm not even offended. I'll give one example, right? This I want to end with. I'll give one example. Someone said, their son who's not really Jewish, they may think they're Jewish, And they marry another non-Jew, which is fine. Two non-Jews marry, getting married, not a problem. So they say, so the person says, they didn't even mention God in the ceremony. Like to get under my skin a little bit. I said, okay, who says they have to? I said, they don't have to. That's fine. Haha. Like, well, what's that going to do to me? Nothing. Right? Because if they're Noahites, all they have to do is live together. They don't have to mention God at all. They don't have to have a ceremony. Zero. So, so you're going to make a statement and get under my skin. Okay, good luck. I'm not going to worry about that. Right? I'm not going to answer. I said, what was my answer to that? I said, okay. I didn't say anything else. I didn't explain my statement. No, they said, okay. And they had like some kind of smile on their face. You're going to get under my skin? They're not Jewish. They can live together. Noahide. Not a problem. They don't want to mention God? No obligation. No obligation. So you're going to get to me under my skin? I don't think so. Not at all. I'm just, I'm venting it out now because I want people to see. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, but the family member, and it's, they're just saying things to say. I get it. But you know what? This person's insane. Right? They deserve me to scoff at them and make fun of them and all this. What am I going to waste my time for? You can say I waste my time speaking to them in general. Okay, maybe. Right? But in the end, it doesn't mean anything. They can say what they want about me and my lifestyle and all this and all that. Doesn't mean anything. Because that person deserves to be in a straitjacket. Right? So I'm going to stop with that. That essentially is chapter 2, Mishnah 10. Right? Again, we're going to see these names come up. We're going to see these names come up next week. I would say probably the next coming weeks. Right? Rabbi Elazar ben Herkinis, Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, Rabbi Yossi the Kohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Nasana, what they're known for. Right? That we're going to see. That we're going to see next week. Chapter 2, Mishnah 11. See, you're so happy. 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours or more. And we just hit chapter 2, Mishnah 10. So you're going to be kissing my boots over here saying, wow, finish the Mishnah in one shot. So next week, we're going to hit chapter 2, Mishnah 11, same time, 2:30 Eastern time. Tomorrow, I just want to mention that Book of Leviticus, chapter 16, going to be interesting, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Now, Tanakh Talk, probably going to speak about Kol Isha. That's probably one topic, or maybe something else about a woman's voice. And Noahide Nations right after that. That I don't think people want to miss, because that is going to be about, or not, it's going to be first in a number of classes on whether non-Jews are allowed to keep Shabbos. And this thing comes up, I can't even tell you how many times. People say I should be allowed to keep Shabbos, and the Rambam, and they're going to see that, not only is it not so simple, what they say, but certainly they shouldn't keep Shabbos, unless they're in the process of conversion or whatever. But that's going to be a number of classes on that. So if, all those classes are free, so anyone wants to tap in, they can certainly tap in, and if they miss it or whatever, they can, I'm definitely taping them, so they're going to be, I can send them a copy. So that's it for tonight, chapter 2, Mishnah 10, and we are done. That's only part 1, no more part 2.
Right.
We're going to go further.
Excellent episode, Rabbi. Excellent episode for sure.
Next
Thank
week,
you so
chapter
much.
2, Mishnah 11.
All right, so we'll be same time next week, but next week I'm back on with Rabbi Poston, so we'll only be able to do about 90 minutes then.
Right.
So there could be several parts.
No, next week they're going to be definitely several parts, because there's a lot here in the next mission. So there will be definitely several parts. Will there be 10? I don't know, but they're going to be a lot.
I think today's episode was nice and concise, and it was still meaningful for sure. Especially, I see too often people new to Noahide, and they want to do that rabbi shop, and that is just, they don't realize how rude that is, or everything should be free. That attitude is just It's a shame, but it's all we can do is keep trudging forward. So So we're going to sign out for today, and we'll be back next week. Folks, have a wonderful, wonderful week.